What's up, guys? Ready for today's recap of Father, I Don't Want This Marriage? Hit subscribe and let's go! The girl, with tears in her eyes, turns to her father and says that she really didn't do it, but the man doesn't even try to listen to her, and the heroine is shocked to think how things went so far. Just recently, there were cries of the princess having fallen, and someone claimed that there was poison in the drink. The fair-haired boy turns sharply to Jubilian and asks if she really decided to harm the princess. The girl, confused, replies that she didn't do it and begs Mikhail to believe her. She explains that the princess was thirsty, so she gave her a glass, but the guy gets up with the princess and stops everyone. He asks if it is because he dumped the girl and chose the princess. The heroine freezes in shock, and the aristocrats immediately begin to whisper about jealousy. Everyone believes that the lady could not come to terms with the separation from the son of the Marquis Gassin and harassed all the women around him. Even the empress got it. And the heroine realizes that the rumors about her hatred for the princess are true, but she swears that she did not wish for the princess to fall into eternal sleep, and at that moment, her father approaches her. The emperor orders that they not stand still and immediately take the immoral girl to prison. The girl turns to her father and asks if he believes her, but he pushes her hand away. The duke tells the emperor that he will take his daughter himself, but he doubts his words. The emperor believes that the duke wants to take advantage of the situation, and then he suggests locking her in a shadow room. The heroine understands that this is a place without magic and weapons, from which there is no exit. If her father does this, it means he is finally abandoning her, and this thought hurts the most. Standing in front of the door, the girl thinks that she has really been abandoned. She remembers her childhood, where her father was always cold and distant. When she approached him, he only asked why she was there, and he coldly told her not to come without a reason. Even the gifts they brought her weren't from him. Growing up, she knew in advance that her father would not even come to her debut. Now she understands that he never loved her, and at that moment the man put something in her hand. He tells her to make the right choice, and the girl sees that it is a dagger. She wonders in horror why she needs him, and whether her father wants her to plunge herself into eternal sleep. The girl begs him not to leave her, but the man simply leaves. Hearing voices, she thinks it is the crown prince, who is capable of putting even his loved ones into eternal sleep without hesitation. She knows that only the royal family can enter the shadow room. The man claims he has come to interrogate the criminal, but the guards say the emperor did not give permission. Then the guy brings the sword to the guard and wonders if torture will help him find out the truth. He assures her that he has no intention of putting her into eternal sleep. Entering inside, he asks if it is really her, and the heroine looks at him in fear. She decides that it is better to take her own life than to endure the torment. The brunette screams for her to stop, and the girl realizes that she has become a stain on the Duke of Floyen's name. Everyone turned their backs on her, and she just wanted to be loved. And that's how her life ended. Now the heroine sits at the table and says that she would like to know the continuation of the story. At that moment, a guy comes up to her and asks if she called him. The girl notices that he is 3 hours late, but he doesn't even apologize. He asks if she called him to reproach him, and the heroine understands that she knows this story. She knew she would be abandoned and thrown into eternal sleep, so she decided to tell everything straight out. She declares that she wants to break up, and Mikhail is first surprised and then sighs heavily. The guy calls it absurd and doesn't believe her word. Mikhail Albert Hessen is the very man she loved and who is the main character of the novel. His reaction is understandable, because in her past life she was an ordinary girl. One day, she was hit by a car and fell into an eternal sleep, being reborn as Jubilian. Memories returned after 2 years of relationship with Mikhail. She realized that she had acted strictly according to the novel and had behaved cruelly. She humiliated the lady and harassed everyone who came close to Mikhail. He was the only one who extended his hand to her when even her father did not love her. Any attention from him attracted her, and she became obsessed. He filled the void, but now she decides to let him go. To save her life, she needs to stay away from him. She says that it doesn't matter whether he believes it or not, it's over between them. The guy replies that he believes her and demands that she never appear before him again. The girl smiles and wonders if she managed to avoid falling into eternal sleep. She apologizes and wishes him happiness, but the guy is sure that it was an attempt to attract attention. He doesn't understand why he's so angry, but the heroine feels relieved. She decides to take a rest and meets her father on the way. This is Duke Regis Adri Floyen, the country's finest swordsman and its only family. But he is a man who does not love his own daughter and simply passes by. She greets him, realizing that she knows his true nature. In this life, she decides not to seek his love, but to use his wealth. Jubilian says he must be tired after training, but he remains silent. She becomes scared, bows, and suggests that everyone rest. As she walks up the stairs, she hears that there was no training today. The girl thinks she misheard, but the man notices that she returned early. She understands that she used to come back late because of Mikhail. Jubilian hesitates, but decides to tell the truth about the breakup. The father immediately asks the reason, because he treated Mikhail well. She says that Mikhail doesn't love her and she doesn't want such a life. The Duke looks at her coldly, and she shudders. She thinks that he was counting on making Mikhail his son-in-law, but she still says that she wants to be with someone who loves her. The man leaves silently, not wanting to continue the conversation. He didn't believe her and left her again without feeling any warmth. Looking after him, she promises to live quietly and not disturb him. The maid walks down the corridor and sighs heavily. She knows that an upset lady can ruin everything. After parting with the Marquis, she expects trouble and knocks on the door with a message about a bath. Opening the door, she sees that the lady is crying. The maid calls for her ladyship in fear, and the heroine thinks that she has been noticed. The maid asks if everything is okay, and Jubilian pretends to yawn. She tells Marilyn that she is too tired and will take a bath tomorrow. The heroine wonders if she was too harsh and repeats that she is tired. The maid bows and says it's no problem. Jubilian thanks her, and the maid runs out of the room in tears. Left alone, the heroine decides not to torment the maids anymore. Marilyn thinks that the lady is having a hard time coping with a broken heart. At this moment, the Duke comes out of the room and hears these words. He asks if the child is really crying and asks for details. The next morning, the heroine wakes up in a good mood. She feels that the day will be successful, and Marilyn wishes her good morning. The maid informs that the Duke invites her to have breakfast together. At the table, the girl realizes that they usually eat separately. The Duke looks at her and the atmosphere becomes tense. He tells her to eat, but the heroine does not understand his intentions. The man watches silently and remembers the maid's words about parting. The heroine knows that compared to her father, she looks insignificant. He is a war hero and defender of the crown, and society has always looked upon her with disdain. The lady has no friends or social skills at all, but to be honest, her table manners are impeccable. At this point, the man turns to Jubilian and asks what her ideal is. The girl drops the knife in surprise and wonders why her father is suddenly asking such a question. He replies that he is just curious, and the heroine thinks that he was not interested in her at all before. She thinks he wants to introduce her to someone and find a future son-in-law. Realizing this, the girl asks if he is telling the truth about the ideal. She replies that her ideal is a man stronger than her father, realizing that such a person does not exist. The Duke asks if she is being honest, and the heroine wonders if he noticed her trick. The girl says that it would be wonderful, but such a person cannot be found in the whole world. After all, her father is the pride of the nation, and she adds that a man should be at least on his level. Jubilian says she will not marry a man without money, honor, family, looks, and skills. The Duke looks at her silently, then calmly replies that he understands. Looking at his face, the girl wonders if he believed her, and decides to answer all his questions. After this, the man suggests going for a walk, and the heroine rises from her chair in surprise. He says he's just doing it, but Jubilian doesn't understand what he's trying to achieve, since they've never walked together before. Soon they find themselves on Agatova Street, where merchants are calling out to customers. The girl walks next to the Duke and tries to understand his true intentions. After a while, the man points to the strange things and says that he takes everything. Jubilian doesn't understand his behavior and mechanically picks up the rabbit. She thinks it's too expensive, but the Duke immediately says he'll take it too. The girl wonders why he buys everything she looks at, since she just wanted to go home. At this moment, a woman with a sword passes by, and the heroine notices it. The Duke asks Jubilian to wait a bit and speaks to the woman. The girl wonders if they know each other, because after Lady Julia's disappearance, there are almost no female guards left. People whisper that it is the Duke of Flown himself standing before them. Jubilian understands that he needs to find a quiet place and move away a little. Opening one of the doors, she unexpectedly runs into a man. The salesman says with a smile that an angel has looked into the shop, and the girl embarrassedly realizes that she has entered the wrong door. But the seller kindly asks her what she would like to buy, although she doesn't need anything. At this moment, another person appears behind her and puts money on the table. Jubilian looks at him and notices his red eyes. The guy meets her gaze, and the girl freezes. She thinks she looked too revealingly, but the brunette only frowns. He rudely asks her what she is staring at and tells her to leave. The girl realizes that she was staring at him because of his appearance, and it embarrasses her. While she is angry, the seller announces the price of 10 silver coins. Jubilian says she was just about to buy this item. The man asks if she is sure, and the girl confirms without hesitation. The salesman wonders if she really needs an armor polishing kit, and she becomes embarrassed. She explains that the fittings in the house have become dull and need attention. The seller notes that one set is not enough for the entire house. He offers to wait and runs to the warehouse, and the heroine, confused, asks him to stop. At that moment, she realizes that everything didn't go according to plan, and the brunette sighs heavily. He places a gold coin on the table and takes the set. Jubilian calls out to him and says he forgot his change. She asks him to wait, because he has given too much. But the guy moves on, and the girl asks if he can hear her. She catches up with him and runs into his back. Turning around, he hears her say that a family can live for 2 weeks on 1 gold coin. She adds that 10 sets can be bought for this money, and the merchant immediately confirms this. Jubilian says she doesn't need 10, and clarifies that that's not what she wanted at all. Soon someone approaches the man and says that they are returning. The servant conveys the Duke of Flowen's invitation to visit the estate, and the boy agrees. The maid asks if something has happened to the crown prince. The guy remembers the lady's words about the gold coin, but then he waves it off and says that everything is fine. Jubilian returns to the Duke, and he looks at the purchases in her hands. She replies that these are armor polishing kits, remembering the strange guy. The Duke sighs and offers to go, and the girl thinks that she is a trifle for him too. She follows behind and feels how tired she is that day. My legs hurt, and the thought of climbing stairs seems excruciating. Jubilian decides to be patient, because she can't quarrel with her father. Suddenly her foot slips, and she starts to fall. The Duke catches her and asks what's wrong with her, and she apologizes. The girl thinks that he will be angry because today everything is going wrong. But the man picks her up and says that they are returning to the carriage. Jubilian assures her that she is fine, but he asks her to remain silent. She doesn't understand what's happening to her and again asks to be put on her feet. The Duke decides to go home and asks her not to twitch. The girl realizes that it is difficult to understand her father, and she feels worse. The man says that she will meet a worthy man, and the heroine only nods. When asked about her health, she replies that everything is fine. At that very moment, she loses consciousness, and her father calls her in fear. He asks Jubilian to wake up and is afraid of losing her. The girl vaguely thinks that he has never called her that. When she wakes up, she realizes that she had a nightmare. The doctor asks how she is feeling, and Jubilian recognizes Alan. He says that she didn't come to her senses for a long time, and everyone was worried. When asked about the time, he replies that 3 days have passed. The maids run into the room and ask how she is feeling. Jubilian notices a mountain of gifts and is surprised by their quantity. They explain to her that these are gifts from noble ladies, and she does not believe it because she has no friends. At that moment, her father comes in and asks if she is awake. He leaves immediately, and the girl realizes that she didn't expect more. He came only for show, so as not to lose his authority in front of the servants. While she was sick, Jubilian realized that the gifts were because of her last name. Without her father's money and property, she will not be able to survive. The maid asks if the lady will really answer all the letters personally. The girl replies that etiquette and reputation dictate so. She understands that she must correct her bad reputation. Soon she begins to read books, which surprises the maids. Jubilian decides to learn how to manage money for the sake of future independence. Preparing for independent life turns out to be boring. She understands that she is paying for her past unwillingness to study. But this is the price of freedom, and when she enters the room, she sees her father. Jubilian wishes him good morning, not knowing he is here. He notices that it is already noon, and the girl sheepishly makes excuses. The Duke turns his attention to the textbooks and asks what she is reading. Jubilian replies that she is studying the duties of a duke and is interested in it. Her father asks why she's interested in this at all. She wonders if he thinks she wants to replace him. She immediately says that she is just curious and has no hidden intentions. Her father asks her to sit down, and the girl remembers the doctor's words that she shouldn't be nervous. She understands that stress is the problem right now and continues to smile, trying to guess his mood. The girl finds herself thinking that if this continues, she'll pass out again. At that moment, the man asks if she knows the 3 foundations of the duchy. The heroine is slightly surprised and replies that these are buildings, the land and the decrees of the ruler, the laws that the inhabitants are obliged to observe. The man says that this is true, and she replies that she read about it in a book. Her father remarks that this means she knows a lot and begins asking questions for almost an hour. Jubilian doesn't understand where this exam came from. The man listens attentively to her opinion, and the heroine thinks why he needs all this. Another hour passes, and the girl is already mentally counting the minutes until the end. After some time, the butler announces the guest, and the heroine breathes a sigh of relief. When her father leaves, he looks at her, but she buries her face in a book, avoiding his gaze. The Duke grins, hands her another book, and tells her to read it. Looking at the cover, the girl realizes that this is a textbook on tactics and strategy. Later, she is still sitting with the book and decides that since her father ordered it, she needs to read. Inside the book, she notices a pendant, and after a while, heads down the corridor. The girl thinks that her father might be in the office and decides to return the pendant to him. As she approaches the turn, she hears a cry asking her not to put the man into eternal sleep. Another voice answers harshly, and Jubilian realizes that his father never argued with anyone. She decides to quickly return the pendant and leave, but suddenly the man calls the name of his interlocutor. The heroine wonders if his name is really Max and is surprised by such closeness. Seeing his back, she notices that he doesn't look like a knight, but rather like a mercenary. At that moment, the young man turns around, and the girl quickly hides around the corner. She realizes she almost got caught and remembers the man from the gun shop. The Duke says that fencing is needed to protect what is dear and not to plunge into eternal sleep. The brunette asks the teacher if such weaknesses are necessary, and Jubilian is surprised by the word teacher. She didn't even know that her father taught someone, and the Duke says that weaknesses make you stronger. The guy turns away and says that he has a lot to do, and then leaves. Jubilian watches from afar and wonders why he has to be so rude. The Duke tells Max that one day he will understand when someone appears whom he will want to protect at any cost. The heroine wonders if her father has such a person. After all, he once condemned his only daughter to eternal sleep. The brunette says he found a hidden rat. The girl is scared because she hates rats. The crown prince says that he will catch the rat for the teacher, and the heroine mentally supports him. But the Duke abruptly forbids this, and the girl does not understand why. She can't take it anymore and wants to run away, but the man says he won't forgive him if he touches her. Jubilian watches secretly and then turns away. She decides to return home because life is more precious and the pendant can be returned later. Realizing that his daughter is gone, the Duke asks Max if he knew who it was. The guy replies that he couldn't see her well in the dark and understands who the Duke is standing up for. He recalls how the Duke taught him fencing for 10 years for his future protection. The guy knows how strict and cold he is and that only one thing makes him soft. Having pronounced the girl's name, he sees the Duke's rare soft smile. He thinks he doesn't understand this because his teacher put the leash on himself. The brunette clenches his fists and decides that he will not allow such weakness. He turns around, and the Duke calls his name. The man recalls being asked to take care of his 3rd son until he could protect himself. He agreed, and the Empress told her son that he had to survive. At the funeral, the boy heard whispers that the crown prince had been stripped of power. She was a mother to the people, but the funeral was modest, and someone called her a weak woman. The Duke thinks he understands the boy's anger because he was like that himself. But he didn't know what it was like to have a daughter, and without her, he wouldn't have understood what a monster he was. One day, Max will meet someone who will become everything to him. At that moment, the maid asks Jubilian about the rat, and she nods. The maid says that the rat catcher destroyed the nest, but the heroine replies that the nest is large and someone could have escaped. She says that the rat needs to be caught as quickly as possible because they reproduce quickly. Later, the Duke asks if anything is bothering his daughter. The butler replies that she ordered the rats to be caught, but not a single one was found. The man thinks that perhaps she misunderstood Max's words, because there are no rats in the house. He asks Derek where rats usually come from. The butler is at a loss, and the Duke says it doesn't matter, and asks about the list of candidates. Derek replies that gender, appearance, money, and status are taken into account, and the list will be ready soon. He also reports a letter from Sir Michael, and the Duke is surprised. He asks what this idiot wants and hears him demanding an answer. Michael accuses Jubilian of playing with his feelings, and the Duke asks if this is true. He orders that no letter is allowed to reach Jubilian, and that this is to be monitored personally. If the letters appear again, they are ordered to be burned. Soon, the maid reports that the rat has been caught. The heroine checks to see if this is true and hears that only one was caught. It seems there are no others, and now she can walk around the house without any problems. The maid adds that a letter has arrived for the lady. Jubilian looks at the envelope and wonders if it is from Count Arlo. When she opens the letter, she sees an invitation and realizes that it was sent by Rose. This is the same girl who tried to harm her earlier. An invitation to a banquet in 3 weeks seems strange, since they are not on the best of terms. The heroine asks Marilyn to bring flowers from the garden and ribbons with bows. She thinks independence starts with little things and asks for more cookies. The girl remembers that she must avoid anything that could lead to her falling into eternal sleep. After some time, the pink-haired lady happily reads the letter. In it, Jubilian congratulates her on her 17th birthday and writes that he hopes that her presents will not be superfluous. The girl understands that the letter was written and decorated personally, and this touches her. She rocks on the bed and can't believe she got an answer. And the fact that the invitation was accepted completely delights her. Rose remembers admiring Jubilian at receptions. But then the heroine walked past her and approached Mikhail. Rose was ignored, but now realizes that she has been forgiven and decides to respond. After some time, Jubilian receives a pink-decorated letter. She is surprised that the Count's daughter responded and opens the letter. After reading it, she smiles, because Rosa tried to repeat her writing style. Then the heroine notices that the letter is 10 pages long and cannot believe the girl's joy. The letter speaks of a grand celebration. The maids whisper that my lady is reading the letter from her first friend so carefully. Jubilian understands that Rose expresses her emotions openly and will expect the same. High society is discussing Lady Floyen's letter and saying that she has matured. Others respond that such people do not change when they remember her past. But someone notices that she was arrogant before, but now she accepted the invitation. The question arises as to what made her do this, since previously she only attended royal banquets. The girls discuss how the Count's daughter is not such a significant figure and speculate about her plans. Some people laugh at the decorated letters, but others say that if Floyen did it, it must be fashionable. Mikhail hears these conversations, clenches his fist, and wonders if Jubilian is now running after Count Arlo's daughter. After some time, the guy returns to his mansion and tells the butler to tell Count Arlo that he accepts the invitation to the banquet. The butler agrees, and Mikhail immediately asks if he has received any letters. The servant replies that there were no letters, and carefully asks whether the master is expecting a response from anyone. The guy coldly says no, lets the butler go, and he leaves. As soon as the door closes, Mikhail gets angry and thinks, so that's how it is. He cannot believe that the girl dared to ignore his letters and decides that Jubilian simply craves his attention. He's sure she'll regret it. Meanwhile, the main character feels the weight of it all. Lady Arlo's birthday is approaching and she can't give a bad gift. Besides, she just wanted to go shopping without a crowd of knights. Only recently, the Duke allowed her to go out only when accompanied, and there are as many as 12 knights, although she dreamed of a quiet life. Soon they come to a dilapidated building, and one of the knights asks if she really wants to go inside. This is Jubilian's cousin, and she asks Galorden to observe formalities, because there are people around. She says that yes, she wants to come in, because there is a fashion workshop nearby, although the knight is surprised by her strange taste. Entering inside, the girl sees that the workshop is sealed. A man sits among the chaos and looks at the guests in surprise. He apologizes and says that he can't do anything now without knowing what family the lady belongs to. The knight offers to leave, but the girl hands him an umbrella and assures him that everything is fine. Then she turns to John Fedor and says that she wants to place an order. The guy is surprised and asks why she approached him. The girl replies that only he is capable of doing what she needs. Fedor is embarrassed and asks to leave because he is not in a state to create right now. When he turns away, the heroine calmly says that she believes in him. Fedor turns around in amazement, and the lady confirms her words. She truly believes that his work is superior to all others, because he is the best master in the entire empire. The guy is touched, wipes away a tear, and awkwardly makes excuses. The heroine understands that he is now depressed because of the inheritance. But in 6 months, he will become the greatest master and enter high society thanks to the necklace for the princess. She understands that this piece of jewelry will become priceless, and it is better to establish a connection with it in advance. Fedor asks what exactly she wants to order. The girl responds and is glad that he has agreed. At this moment, a servant approaches the Duke. He reports that the list of candidates is ready, and the Duke notices Maximilian's name, ordering it to be crossed out. Another servant enters the office with a letter from the Emperor. It orders an immediate appearance at the palace. Meanwhile, the heroine is walking through the marketplace. She decides to buy something for herself, because she couldn't concentrate before. Soon, she notices beautiful cufflinks. The girl imagines them on her father. She decides to give them to him and return the pendant at the same time. She is worried about the delay with the pendant, but the gift may soften her father. At that moment, a man enters the shop and recognizes Lady Floyan. The girl looks at his grin and recognizes Radian. This is Mikhail's cousin, and a well-known gossip of high society. She responds politely and thinks that it would be worth ignoring her lover's former relative. Radian is upset that she is so formal. He decides that it is because of the breakup with Mikhail. He kisses her hand and asks her to call him simply Radian. The girl thinks it's rude, but she puts up with it. She understands that he is deliberately provoking her. The lady takes her hand back and says it's time to go. Radian laughs and remarks that it sounds more like running away, but she says goodbye. The girl leaves with the cufflinks, and he sees her off with a grin. Radian thinks that the gift is for a man and wonders how Mikhail will react. Meanwhile, the Duke is in the Palace of Asset and appears before the Emperor. The Emperor reports that a rat has appeared in the palace. He wants the most trusted person to catch her, otherwise he won't be able to sleep. The Duke agrees and understands the true meaning of the task. The Emperor says that the rat itself fell into eternal sleep and left no trace. The Duke must remain in the palace and lead the investigation. The Emperor grins and says he can relax now. One of the knights doubts the order, as the investigation will drag on. The Duke cuts him off sternly and orders him to be careful. He tells us not to attract attention while someone is watching from a tree. The boy cannot believe that the Duke obeys the Emperor. Max is disappointed and wonders how much longer the teacher will allow himself to be used. At this time, they report that the escort was completed successfully. The Duke asks about Jubilian and hears that she was looking for a gift and was delighted with the invitation. He smiles, and the Crown Prince is surprised by this reaction. The guy thinks it's all because of how dear she is to the Duke. He considered the Duke to be as tough as he was, but thoughts of his daughter make him soft. The Emperor exploits this weakness, and Max remembers the teacher's words. That weaknesses make you stronger, but he considers this a lie. He decides to examine this weakness himself. Meanwhile, Radian comes to Mikhail. He greets him and sits down, complaining of fatigue. Mikhail asks what he needs. Radian says he has good news, but first he wants some tea. He smirks and hints that Jubilian has found someone else. Mikhail reacts sharply, and Radian says that he saw her buying men's cufflinks. He asks if Mikhail understands what this means. Such gifts are given only to the closest ones. Mikhail thinks that she might have a lover. Radian mockingly says that this is good news. The butler appears, but Mikhail orders Radian to leave. Radian says goodbye and pretends to apologize. He says he doesn't understand why he upset his owner. Mikhail is left in shock and thinks that Jubilian really has someone else. He remembers her words about love and cannot believe it. In a rage, he slams the table and the butler asks if everything is all right. Mikhail coldly replies that the girl will pay for it. At this time, Jubilian is standing at the window and thinks that his father is late again. The maid reports that the Duke has gone away for training for a couple of days. The girl is upset because she wanted to return the pendant and give the cufflinks. Later, she falls asleep with a book when the balcony door opens. The guy looks at her and thinks how weak she is. As if he could fall into eternal sleep from anything. He doesn't understand why the teacher is so fixated on her. Suddenly, the girl sleepily opens her eyes and says that he seems to have come to the wrong house. The brunette is surprised, and she calmly says that this is the residence of the Duke of Floyan. The guy doesn't understand why she isn't afraid and remains so calm. The brunette sharply replies that he was not mistaken, and the main character asks if this is true and advises him to change his mind, otherwise he will regret it. She says she won't enter eternal sleep for another year, and sighs heavily. Max thinks she doesn't understand the danger at all. Jubilian lights a candle, but the guy immediately knocks it out of her hands, outraged that she dared to turn on the light. She seems fearless yet fragile. He watches her face closely as she approaches. At that moment, the girl realizes that she's standing in front of her father's student. The brunette recalls their meeting in the city. Then she said that for this money you could buy 10 polishing kits. Jubilian sighs quietly, glad that this wasn't the worst option. Opening her eyes, she saw a dark figure looking straight at her. At first she thought it was a nightmare, but the pinch confirmed it was real. Thieves break in at night, or assassins, and the girl in horror thinks about who wants her to plunge into eternal sleep. She understands that it could have been anyone, because she was cruel in the past. Jubelian wonders why the old her was so bad. But she can't die now, because that has to happen later, after the princess's coming-of-age celebration. Realizing that the person in front of her is her father's student, she calms down a little and talks to him. Jubelian realizes how scared she was and decides to double-check everything from now on. The guy speaks rudely to her again, and she frowns and asks why he is so impolite. Even as his father's student, he must observe etiquette, but his father only smirks. Jubelian realizes that he is still just as rude, and this is starting to anger him. He burst into her room at night and scared her, and if it weren't for her student status, everything would have been different. At this moment, a question is heard from behind the door, asking if everything is okay, and the girl gets out of bed. A dagger is immediately pressed to her neck, and she freezes. The voice asks again if everything is okay, and Jubelian understands that they are waiting for an answer from her. She says everything is fine, she just couldn't sleep and decided to read. The knight accepts the answer and leaves, and Jubelian remarks that she did what he wanted. She asks him to put the sword away, not understanding why he is so angry. After all, it was he who invaded her, and by yawning, she makes this clear. The crown prince is startled by her yawn, and the girl realizes that fatigue has taken over. He asks what she is doing, and she replies that she wants to sleep and suggests that he leave. The brunette says he doesn't have a home, and Jubelian wonders if he's a mercenary. She asks if he's just wandering around, and he nods. The girl thinks that mercenaries usually spend the night in taverns, and he looks abandoned and homeless, as if he was kicked out. Perhaps he came to her father because he had nowhere else to go, since he had previously been a secret guest. Jubelian thinks he might have accidentally entered her room. She wonders what to do without her father and realizes that she has no choice. The lady invites him to stay here temporarily. The brunette is surprised, and she decides that she must take care of the guest. She takes the blanket and approaches the crown prince. Handing it over, the girl says that there is no need for gratitude, he will repay later. The brunette looks at her in bewilderment, and she goes to bed, leaving him a choice. She quickly falls asleep, and the crown prince remains lost in thought. He doesn't understand why she wasn't afraid of him. Her gaze was calm and strong, without fear. He decides that there is no time to waste, and that the duke's weakness must be eliminated. In this way, he will help the teacher to free himself from the power of the emperor. But he remembers her smile and words about his father's student, and freezes. The girl is sleeping peacefully, and he himself wants to sleep. He is surprised by this thought, because a knight must not let his guard down. Even at a halt, one must not relax, and he knows it. But looking at the lady's calm face, he decides to lie down for a minute, and he falls asleep. At this time, Jubelian dreams. A huge dragon. People run in panic. She is left alone, stumbles and falls. She is in pain and scared, but a cry for her daughter's protection is heard. The girl thinks it is her father and opens her eyes. She realizes that it was just a dream about a dragon. The lady decides that this is a good sign and the day will be good. But then she sees the crown prince's face and is shocked. He sleeps peacefully in her bed, and she doesn't dare wake him up. Jubelian sits nearby and convinces himself that it's nothing to worry about. She notices that he is rude but very handsome, even more handsome than Mikhail. An absurd news story about the kidnapping of a handsome man appears in the imagination. She decides to wake him up by reaching out her hand. Suddenly, he grabs her and pins her to the floor. The crown prince asks what she is doing, and she looks on, stunned. The girl notices that he slept well and is cheerful. Max doesn't believe he fell asleep, and Jubelian is angry at his ingratitude. He broke into her room and slept in her bed, and now he's still indignant. The girl starts laughing, and the brunette gloomily asks why. Through her laughter, she feels that they are somewhat similar. He reminds her of the black cat from her childhood. He also went wherever he wanted and slept wherever he wanted. The comparison seems so accurate that she can't stop. At this moment, the maid knocks and asks if she is awake. Jubelian tries to calm down, realizing that she can't show herself like this. She asks him to wait and leads the guy behind her. The girl pushes him into the closet and asks him to sit quietly. The brunette doesn't understand, and she says that they could have been misunderstood. He gets irritated and says he doesn't have time for nonsense. She mentions that animals call it mating, and he freezes. The guy is embarrassed and indignant, but she shuts him up. Jubelian whispers that he has gone mad, and asks to be quiet. Outside, the maid thinks she heard something and calls for Marilyn. She pulls the handle and is surprised to find the door locked. Jubilian whispers to the boy to trust her. The brunette nods and hides in the closet, and she smiles. The girl strokes his head, thinking that it is better this way. He is indignant, but the maid calls, and Jubilian answers. She closes the closet, and the maid enters the room. Jubilian apologizes for the disturbance and assures that everything is fine. She says she was afraid of a possible invasion. The maid is surprised, because this is the Duke's house. The girl smiles, knowing that there was one thief after all. She explains this by anxiety due to the absence of her father. Jubilian thinks that a cat in a closet should behave quietly. The maid takes her by the hands and assures her that the master will return safe and sound. She suggests going for a walk to unwind. At this moment, the maid notices bruises on the lady's arms. The brunette in the closet is wondering how much longer he has to sit there. He doesn't understand why he's here at all, and decides that this lady is very strange. Instead of being scared, she laughed, and the guy doesn't understand what's wrong with her. After sitting in the closet for about 20 minutes, the brunette wonders where she went, and suddenly hears a strange groan. He wonders what that sound is, and the main character asks Marilyn to go down a little lower. The maid screams in pain, and the crown prince is shocked to think what is going on there. He immediately pulls himself together, realizing that this is definitely not mating, and that his thoughts have gone in the wrong direction. When he is about to open the door, the maid says that my lady should see a doctor, and she will bring painkillers. The girl replies that it's not necessary, that the ointment will help her, but the guy doesn't understand why if she's not injured. Marilyn asks for patience and says that the lady has bruises on her arm and shoulder. The brunette is shocked and wonders where she got the bruises, but the main character says it's her own fault. She explains that she shouldn't have fallen out of bed, and the guy remembers throwing her on the floor in the morning. He realizes that she was hurt then, and he clenches his fists, thinking how easy it is to hurt the weak. The brunette considers this obvious, and the maid asks the lady to take a rest. When the maid leaves, the main character goes to the closet and opens it. With a smile, she says that the guy can go out and suggests having breakfast together. The brunette asks why, and she answers with a smile that it tastes better this way. She takes his hand and assures him that he should try it, because they have an excellent cook. Max follows her in confusion and soon sees sandwiches in front of him. He thinks that by having breakfast together, she meant cucumber sandwiches. It's his least favorite food, but he still takes the sandwich. He doubts whether he should eat it, because the plan was different and to leave after this. But under the main character's gaze, he puts a cucumber sandwich in his mouth. Jubilian asks if it's tasty, and the brunette thinks it's disgusting. He still swallows and nods, not understanding what he's doing here at all. Jubilian is glad that he liked it, because she was already starting to worry. The brunette takes another bite and suddenly realizes that the cucumbers aren't so bad. Crowds of people pass through the palace of the Asset Empire every day. One man knows that Duke Floyan and his fighters are guarding the emperor. As he approaches the door, the knights stop him, and he declares that he has come for an audience. He understands that delaying could cause unrest, like before. This is the Chancellor and Duke Elios, who asks the emperor if he will truly leave the Duke as his protector. He says that you won't find a more loyal dog. The Duke sighs, remembering the war with Teria 10 years ago. Then the young king fled, unable to defend the country, and only one knight remained. The cowardly ruler and the hero who brought victory became the current emperor and Duke of Floyan. The support of Duke Regis saved the empire from overthrow. But people remember the cowardice of the past, and the Chancellor warns of discontent. He offers to lure the assassins into a trap, but receives a cold stare. The emperor says he knows what he is doing and lets the Duke go, but is reminded of his tarnished reputation. To keep the Duke, the crown prince must be brought back, and he is asked to make a wise decision. The emperor does not believe that they are trying to teach him without knowing the whole picture, but he is confident that the Duke will not betray him as long as he has this. The main character yawns and realizes that after eating she feels sleepy. She looks at the sofa and sees how comfortably the guy has sprawled out there, taking her place. The brunette notices her gaze and asks what happened, and she asks if he was asleep. Jubilian wonders when he will leave, and is afraid that he will wait for his father. The crown prince asks why she looks like that, and she inquires about his relationship with his father. The brunette replies that they are not bad, and this does not surprise him. She remembers her father's warm voice and his soft expression. Jubilian remembers wanting to return the pendant to him and give him the cufflinks. Since he is his father's disciple, he should know what he likes. The brunette suggests asking directly, because he doesn't like empty talk. The girl asks shyly if cufflinks are a good gift. The crown prince asks if it is a gift, and she hides her face behind a book. She prays that he won't say something that his father won't like, and is surprised by his silence. Suddenly, the crown prince comes closer and takes the book. He asks who the gift is for, and she is amazed at how quickly he was there. Jubilian says he can figure it out himself. The guy recalls rumors about her past with Mikhail. He thinks that she is drawn to him again and speaks about it with pity. He asks if such a person is really worthy of gifts, and the girl asks for forgiveness, but sets a limit. The brunette understands that he is worried about her, since she is protecting Mikhail. He doesn't believe she's so caught up in mediocrity, and asks about her pride. The main character replies that she wants to improve the relationship and is not obsessed with him. After all, they are talking about their father, and silence hangs between them. The brunette asks if she was talking about her father, and she is surprised by the question. His face softens and he smiles, and Jubilian doesn't understand why. She apologizes and asks him to stop smiling and say something. The brunette asks if she wants to give her father cufflinks, and she shows him the box. Max says it's a useless gift, and the girl gets angry to herself. She quips that he is apparently a master at choosing gifts. He replies that he recently sent a gift to his father so that he wouldn't be bored. Jubilian asks what exactly he gave. The guy refuses to talk and assures that the Duke will be glad to receive any gift. The girl smirks, not believing him, and he notices it. She says that if it were that simple, she wouldn't ask. The brunette wonders if she really doesn't know how dear she is to her father. Jubilian decides to simply give the cufflinks, and the guy realizes that the Duke is ready to do anything for her. He doesn't know if she understands this and thinks how pathetic it all is. The Duke is sitting in a tree when a bird flies up to him and pulls his hair. He puts her on his finger and asks her to fly away because his daughter is afraid of small animals. At this moment, he is approached with news from home. He asks what happened and hears the name Jubilian. The Duke immediately jumps up and worries that something bad has happened to her. The servant gets scared and replies that the lady is simply worried that he did not spend the night at home. The man wonders if she was really waiting for him, since this had never happened before. He smiles, and the servant is surprised by this. The servant adds that the lady is not feeling well and does not leave her chambers. The Duke's face darkens, and he realizes it's time to end the game with Max. He decides to meet with the Emperor immediately. The main character is sitting in the residence, and the Crown Prince says that there is no need to write anything. She replies that simply handing over the gift would be rude, and crumples up another letter. The girl doesn't know what to write to improve the relationship and quietly apologizes. After hearing the answer, she asks what he usually talked about with her father. The guy thinks and remembers how the Duke talked about his daughter. He said that Jubilian was a genius since childhood and was reading at the age of 5. She even made the brooch on it with her own hands. The brunette admits that they didn't talk much. Jubilian realizes that he didn't help and decides to cope on her own. An hour later, she smiles, pleased with the letter she has written. The brunette looks in and is surprised, asking if she's really going to send this. The girl replies that, of course, she agrees. She has admitted all her mistakes and sincerely asks for forgiveness. The brunette reads a letter in which the lady apologizes for the pendant that fell out of the book and explains that circumstances prevented her from returning it immediately. She also asks to accept the cufflinks as an apology and again apologizes for the delay. Having finished, the girl says with a smile that she will now send everything and reminds him that he knows what to do if someone comes in. She adds that she will be back soon, and the guy wishes her good luck. The brunette imagines the teacher's reaction, while at this time he is in the audience hall of the Imperial Palace. The Emperor tells the Duke that several days have passed since the order to find the culprit. There is still no news, and the Duke replies that he continues to search. The Emperor slams the table and demands results, ordering that this rat be found. The Duke realizes that Max called his daughter a rat, and the irony grates on his ears. He immediately realized that Max was behind the assassination attempt, wanting to pit him against the Emperor. He remembers the Crown Prince's words and realizes that he is no longer afraid. The Duke does not oppose the Emperor only because the time has not yet come. The Emperor notices his gaze and becomes frightened, and the Duke assures him that there will be no new attempts on his life. He explains this by the increased security and the fact that the attackers do not want unnecessary attention. The emperor realizes that the duke simply wants to return home and becomes angry. The duke declares that he will stay another day, which irritates His Majesty even more. The emperor recalls the advice to bring back the crown prince to contain Florian. He realizes he hasn't spoken to Regis, Weakness, the crown prince, in a long time. A plan is brewing in my head to bring back the crown prince by promising him the throne, in exchange for help in subduing this idiot. Meanwhile, Jubalion realizes that his father will immediately go to the office. Entering there, she sees neatly laid out documents. The office seems especially large, and she is glad that her father is not there. Jubalion decides to simply leave the gift without delivering it personally. The gaze catches the list of candidates on the table. Seeing one name, she drops the box in shock. Crown Prince Maximilian Kishin Asset is listed there, and the girl can't believe her eyes. With a shudder, she realizes that her father didn't tell her anything. She recalls a conversation where she named her ideal, and suddenly she realizes that this is a list of future husbands. Maximilian fits all the bills, but he is cruel and put his own father into eternal sleep. In the novel, he was the main villain, and she was horrified. With tears in her eyes, Jubalion wonders how her father could have done this to her. Meanwhile, the brunette is bored in his room. He looks at the door and wonders why it takes her so long to come back. Hearing a rustling sound, he grabs the servant and asks what he is doing. The servant asks to let him go and says that Madame sent him. The guy lets him go and demands an explanation. The messenger says that the emperor is behaving strangely and hears agreement. He adds that the emperor has accepted the chancellor's advice and wants to bring back the crown prince. The servant hands over the sword and says it's time to return. Crown Prince Maximilian is ordered to appear. Jubalion understands that she must return to the room because she will not allow herself to be exposed to the tyrant. She's up against the royal family, and it won't be easy. She decides to convince her father to change his mind and looks for a reason to refuse. We can't talk about the list of candidates. Returning to the room, she doesn't see the guy on the couch and thinks he's hiding. She whispers that she's back and looks into the closet. Then he checks behind the mirror and under the bed, but he is nowhere to be found. Jubalion is at a loss, as he already has enough problems. She notices a note where he writes not to look for him. He left and will return when the time comes, and she thinks that even a cat would be more polite. The girl feels empty and says that he disappeared too suddenly. She wanted to say goodbye in person. Meanwhile, the brunette was riding on horseback. He wonders if she read the note and why he wrote it at all. He is worried about the thought that she might not be looking for him. He looks at the house from the top of the mountain once again. The servant calls him in surprise, but the crown prince orders him to take a shortcut. After some time, Jubalion wakes up and is surprised by the bright light. She sees the note in his hands and remembers that he left. She wonders if he's found shelter, but she stops herself. She realizes that she fell asleep without having come up with a plan. The girl looks at the cufflinks and imagines her father's cold reaction. She decides to return the pendant as soon as possible, as there is more and more work to do. The maids noticed the lady's strange behavior. She stopped walking and spent hours looking out the window due to the Duke's absence. Marilyn sees that the lady is especially depressed today. She talks about the good weather but only gets a short answer. Marilyn suggests a walk in the sun. Jubalion doubts because she always feels sad alone. The maid almost cries, remembering the little lady's words. She understands that Jubalion has been lonely since childhood. Marilyn hugs her and promises to be there. Soon they go outside and Jubalion sits down at the dessert table. The maid notices that her favorite cupcakes are gone and runs off to make new ones. The girl wants to stop her, but she has already disappeared. Jubalion thinks that being alone is actually a good thing now. She needs to come up with a plan before her father returns. She ponders dejectedly until she hears a voice. In front of her appears the Duke, riding up on horseback. Jubalion is shocked to recognize his father and does not understand why he is so early. She was told that he would be gone for a long time, and she was confused. She asks about training and fatigue, but suddenly falls silent. The Duke says he will never leave her alone again. The girl is embarrassed. He explains that he was in a hurry to get home and asks if she had had lunch. She replies no, and he reminds her to take care of herself. Otherwise, she might lose consciousness again. Jubalion's face darkens, realizing the hidden meaning of these words. She feels fear, realizing that now she will not be able to complain about anything. The Duke takes her hand and invites her to dinner. The girl tenses up at this gesture and remembers the past. She understands that it was foolish to expect warmth from her father. She will no longer seek his attention. She feels awkward sitting alone with him at the table. The Duke mentions a reception next week. Jubilian confirms that she is invited to the birthday of the Count's daughter. He asks who she will go with, and the girl gets scared. She clutches her handkerchief and talks about the many invitations. The lady smiles and says it's difficult to choose. The Duke looks at his daughter silently, and then says that he understands. The main character wonders if she really managed to get out of this mess, and realizes that she needs to quickly finish eating and write a letter. After some time, she looks at the mountain of letters and tells Marilyn that there were more offers than expected. The maid replies that there are plenty to choose from, and the girl doubts whether this is true. She notices a candidate from the Imperial Knights, a renowned swordsman with impeccable manners, Sir Bormir. The second turns out to be the son of Count Lewine, famous for his beauty and sharp mind. The third candidate is a high-ranking official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the son of Marquis Crocus. The lady promised her father to make a choice, but she realizes that all the candidates are too good, and this is ironically his fault. After thinking for a moment, she tells Marilyn that it is already late, and it would be better to send the letter in the morning. The maid leaves the room and immediately runs into the Duke. He asks about Jubilian, and the woman is frightened by his sudden appearance. She offers to call the lady, but the Duke replies that it is not necessary. He notices the letter in her hands and asks if his daughter has made a decision. The maid replies that yes, and the son of Count Lewine has been chosen. The Duke is interested in what they say about him and hears that the young man is handsome and popular in society. The man frowns, thinking with displeasure about his famous beauty. Marilyn talks dreamily about how they could have fun and flirt. She gets carried away by her fantasy, but when she opens her eyes, she realizes that the Duke has already left. Soon the Duke is sitting opposite the Marquis, who is trembling as he guesses the reason for the visit. The Marquis asks about the purpose of the late visit, but the Duke looks coldly. His gaze lingers on the revealing outfit, and the young man quickly straightens his clothes. The Duke looks at him silently and remembers his daughter's words about money, honor, family, beauty, and skills of the future husband. He tells Edmund Asen-Lewine that he failed the selection process. The next morning, the maid reports an order from Fyodor's workshop. Jubilian is happy because Rose's birthday is approaching, and she was worried about whether they would make it in time. She reads the note about the muse and notices the second box, surprised by the coincidence. The maids admire the contents, and the lady realizes that Jan's work has charmed everyone again. She promises to show it later, but there is a knock on the door again. The butler announces the visit, and the girl asks what happened. He says that Edmund, the second son of Count Lewine, has arrived with an answer to the letter. Jubilian is surprised by the personal visit and decides to come down as soon as she is ready. After some time, the young man greets Lady Florian, saying that they have not seen each other for a long time. Jubilian returns the greeting, and the maid shows them into the living room. She notes that he is indeed handsome, although he cannot compare to Mikhail. His manners are inferior to his father's disciple, but his appearance is still attractive. She hopes that he is not hungry, and at that moment, the young man turns to her. Jubilian finds herself lost in thought as he talks about the purpose of the visit. Suddenly, he falls to his knees, asking for an apology, and the girl is perplexed. He asks if she has heard rumors in high society. They say that the lady has a secret lover, and that is why the letter surprised him. Jubilian is amazed, because she hardly leaves the house. She sighs, thinking about the ridiculous rumors, and decides not to panic. The girl says that this is impossible because she was at home the whole time, and the young man apologizes. Jubilian replies that everything is fine and asks him to get up. She thinks that at least she found out about the rumors and will definitely find the one who spread them. The young man approaches and calls her an angel. He says he wouldn't have given up on her if he had made it through the selection process. Jubilian looks at him in surprise, accepts the rose, and hears the offer to have lunch together. Suddenly he freezes, noticing the Duke looking gloomily out of the window. The young man apologizes in a panic and hurries to leave. Jubilian is perplexed, while in the meantime a reception is taking place in the flourishing salon. An aristocrat is discussing how the Count decorated the house. Another remembers last year's roses and wonders what will happen this time. The conversation then turns to who will escort Lady Florian to the ball. Minnie came precisely because of the rumors about her. One of the ladies hints at her new chosen one after breaking up with Marquis Hassan. Some people suggest that this is a person who does not appear in public. Suddenly, there is the sound of a broken glass, and it turns out to be the Crown Prince. The aristocrats turn around and he menacingly asks about their love of rumors. One lady is indignant and talks about witnesses. The crown prince comes closer and asks if she saw it in person. She answers evasively, and her friends support her. Then he coldly suggests saying it to Lady Floraine's face. The girl falls silent and turns away. The others also lower their gazes. The crown prince thinks about their pity and calls it absurd. As he leaves, he wonders why it made him so angry. After a while, he sits down on the sofa next to Madame Prisha. She greets him joyfully and asks about news. He replies that he will not return there again because of the mess. The woman is surprised, because the situations seem the same. She asks what has so upset the crown prince. He replies that slander cannot be called information. Madame notices that he rarely shows emotions, and this surprises her. The brunette says he just wants to silence the unruly people. She smiles, realizing that he has changed since his visit to the Duke of Floyan. He demands truthful information about Lady Floyan and hears that there was no affair. The woman recalls a letter to Count Loin's son, offering to become a partner. She says that she chose him because of his beauty and upbringing, even though he is a famous heartthrob. The crown prince admits that he now understands, but sees nothing special in this face. Madame adds that young Loin declined the offer. The man clenches his fist, outraged by the insolence of the count's son. The woman thinks something strange is happening to him. She continues, saying that the rumors were spread by Viscount Droyle's son, and he adds that he is Mikhail Hassan's cousin. The crown prince asks again menacingly, and the woman ironically reminds him of their past. Now Mikhail just watches as his cousin dishonors her honor. The brunette rises and orders that all the weaknesses of the Hassans and Droyles be found out. The woman replies that she will do so, thinking of the Duke of Floyan. When she wants to add something, the crown prince is already gone. Meanwhile, Jubelian sits at the table alone with his father. She wonders how it happened that her father caught her right after Loin left. He recently said that he was there just in time. The girl understands that this is a forced tea party and is angry at the conventions. The Duke asks about her partner, and she is afraid to tell the truth. Jubelian replies that he is still considering his options. Her father tells her to tell him if she doesn't find anyone, and this scares her. After a while, she gets up and says that she will go to her room. The Duke announces his imminent departure on urgent business, and the girl is surprised. He says he must give a warning, but she doesn't know to whom. The Duke promises to return before dinner, and she agrees. Jubelian wonders if this warning might apply to her too. The brunette watches the Duke and notices that he leaves the house too late. He rarely showed up there before. When the Duke leaves, the boy jumps onto the balcony of the lady's room. Upon entering, he realizes she's not there. He wonders where the lady might be now. Perhaps she went to the library. He also has the thought that she might have gone to send a letter of invitation to a new partner candidate. This makes the crown prince angry, and at the same time, he understands that he shouldn't care whether she finds a partner or not. At this moment, someone calls out to the guy and asks what he is doing in her room. It turns out to be the main character. The brunette immediately comes closer and asks where she's been. Jubelian is shocked, wondering if that was the first thing he said upon seeing her. The girl replies that she was downstairs, and the boy turns away, saying it's all clear. The main character chuckles to herself, finding the situation amusing. He appeared out of nowhere, and she has no idea why he even came. The lady wonders if the words in the note were true. She says that if he came to see his father, that he must have urgent business and is not at home. The boy replies that he knows this, having just seen the Duke leave. After this, he sits down on the sofa, and the main character is perplexed as to why he came if he knew about his father's absence. She already has enough to worry about. Suddenly, the guy appears next to her and asks why the lady is sighing so heavily. She's terrified, realizing he was sitting on the couch just a second ago. She explains that she's simply overwhelmed by the workload and her head is spinning. Max asks what happened and offers to tell everything, promising to keep the secret. The protagonist understands that confession can ease the soul. She first asks him to promise never to tell his father, and the boy agrees. After this, he gives his word, and the girl adds that in case of violation, he will owe her 100 gold bars. The man replies that he agrees, and even if he accidentally lets it slip, he will give her all his fortune. The main character only smiles, wondering how a man without a home could risk his entire fortune. She warns him that she'll squeeze every last penny out of him. The guy gets embarrassed and says that if an agreement has been reached, then she should tell him already. Jubelian says someone is currently spreading malicious rumors about her. Allegedly, Lady Floyan is in a secret relationship with an unknown man. She's not bothered by the idea of a secret affair, but she knows nothing of the sort happened. The rumors themselves don't bother her. However, everyone she asked to become her partner turned her down precisely because of this. Brunet silently resents them, considering them fools who believed rumors without investigating. He catches himself thinking that he would have gone to the reception with her himself. At that very moment, the brunette catches himself, not understanding where he's gotten himself into. He tries to calm down and focus on the conversation. Jubilian says she could have gone alone, and the brunette asks what the problem is then. The lady replies that her father is planning to marry her off. The man exclaims in shock, "Can this really be true?" The main character says that she saw the list of suitors on her father's desk, and it looks like he already has a candidate. At this time, he thinks how a father can even try to marry off his own daughter. He can't help but wonder if all his concern for her is just a pretense. The main character says that's why she must show her father that she already has a partner for the ball. After all, if there is no partner, the father will definitely try to set her up with one of the suitors. The brunette notices that a worthy partner may be closer than she thinks. The protagonist asks what he means. After that, she rises from her chair, as if she's realized something. She takes the guy's hands and thanks him. The crown prince realizes this irritates him, but he can't do anything about it. The protagonist wonders why she didn't think of this before. She decides to ask Geraldine to be her partner. The brunette is immediately shocked, realizing she wasn't talking about him. He still asks who this man is. Silence falls between them. The girl breaks the silence and says that this is her personal knight, who always accompanies her. Geraldine is often around, so many people know him by sight. The girl adds that she will tell her father about her fear of encountering people who gossip about her at the banquet. Then, the father will understand that choosing a personal knight as a partner is not so bad. Moreover, he's related to her on her mother's side, so there's no need to worry about rumors. The lady asks if that's the ideal scenario. The brunette thinks that, since the knight is related, there's nothing to worry about. At that very moment, he catches himself asking himself why he was so nervous, and what difference does it make to him who she goes with. Jubilian thanks the guy and says that it really means something to her that he listened to her. The crown prince looks embarrassed, then stands up abruptly and says that it is time for him to go. Max understands that something strange is happening to him, and he cannot understand why he came here at all. Jubilian asks him to wait. When he stops, the girl hands him a small bag. The guy picks it up and asks what it is. The lady offers to open it. Looking inside, the crown prince sees money. The girl says she's not giving it to him for nothing. In return, he will have to help her when she asks. The main character thinks that she was worried about his departure and is glad that she can now take on his travel expenses. The lady adds that they will always take him in if he has nowhere else to go, and asks if he agrees. The guy nods silently. Meanwhile, one of the lady's potential partners rides in a carriage. He calmly reads a book, and the coachman informs him that he only has to cross the bridge to the residence of the Duke of Floyan. Suddenly, the carriage shudders violently, and the man cries out, asking what happened. The coachman doesn't know what to answer. At that very moment, someone turns to the owner of the carriage and asks if he is Ronald Herman Crocus. The man asks if it's the Duke himself. His interlocutor replies that since he's decided to pay a visit, he should stop and talk here. After a short while, the brunette asks if he understood the warning and orders him not to even approach his daughter, since he is not her equal. The Duke says that if everything is clear, he should immediately turn around and go back. The man replies that he would like to hear everything personally from her, and not through the Duke, noting his influence and authority. He recalls that 10 minutes ago, the Duke had already turned down another candidate, declaring that he would not become her partner. Now the man understands that Bromir disappeared immediately after one phrase. His interlocutor states that Jubilian still has no choice but to agree. The Duke sharply asks if he really mentioned his daughter's name and dares to say it out loud. His interlocutor replies that that's not the point at all. The man asks why he is polite to him, but his daughter dares to call him by his name. He then asks if Ronald Herman Crocus thinks his daughter is frivolous. The horrified boy apologizes and orders the coachman to turn the carriage around. As he leaves, the Duke calms down and realizes that Lowain, Bromir, and Crocus were on his daughter's suitor list, and he doesn't like any of them. He decides to tell Derek to make a new list. Meanwhile, the main character realizes she has a grand plan. Because of rumors, the blue diamond cufflinks bought for her father turned into a gift for an unknown lover. Come to think of it, only Radian, whom she had encountered then, could have examined the cufflinks so closely. The girl understands that as soon as her father puts on these cufflinks, the rumors will disappear. They are custom-made and one of a kind. So first of all, she needed to get her father comfortable. After a while, the lady said with a smile that her father had returned before dinner, as he had promised, and she was glad he had arrived so quickly. The Duke reports that he heard from Derek that Jubilian wants to give him something. The girl replies that there is indeed one thing she's been keeping for some time. The lady hands over the jewelry and says that last time her father left them and went away. The man looks at the jewelry emotionlessly and replies that he understands. The protagonist didn't expect such indifference. She realizes it's time to bring out the big guns and hands her father the cufflinks. The man looks slightly surprised when he sees them. The girl says she stumbled upon them while shopping. She immediately thought of her father, deciding that blue diamonds would suit him, so she bought them. Jubilian looks at her father and realizes that this too hasn't elicited a reaction. She'd hoped he'd wear them, but she'd been wrong. The lady realizes her plan is falling apart. About to bring up her partner, she mentions that her father is very busy, but the day after tomorrow. The man only replies that it's good since she brought it up herself. He says he's ready to go to the banquet with her. Jubilian is shocked. The lady sees that her father is absolutely serious and understands that this was not at all part of her plans. The crown prince is at this time in the tower with a spire next to the flowering salon. The servant watches his master and wonders why he's so lost in thought. Max considers what's happening utter madness. Since that day, he's been thinking about that girl constantly. After all, he snuck into her room to see the teacher's weakness. The guy remembers her words about the evil rumors that Lady Florine is secretly dating an unknown man. The crown prince convinces himself that this is merely sympathy for the victim of dubious rumors. Besides, there's no reason to see her again now. But then he remembers her words about how they would always take him in if he had nowhere else to go. The man slams his hand on the sofa. The servant asks if something happened today. Max tells him to mind his own business and begin his report. The servant understands his anxiety and will interfere anyway. He reports that there is nothing new, except that Victor, His Highness's understudy, asked him to convey a message. The crown prince has been absent for too long, and the emperor's aides begin to suspect him. The man smiles and says it's amazing how many years they went without noticing what was happening right under their noses. He orders Victor to do everything perfectly. He thinks it's hard for the poor guy, who complains every day about the heat in his armor. The butler adds news about Lady Florine. The whole world is gathering to gossip about her at the banquet in honor of Count Arlo's daughter. Lady Florine is considered the only stain on Duke Florine's reputation. She rarely appeared at events except for banquets at the Imperial Palace, so this celebration is the perfect place to finally destroy the reputation of a famous villain. Moreover, there are rumors of her affair with an unknown man. Now the Count's mansion is like a pillory for her. The man orders the servant to stop, saying that there is no need to go into such details. The woman is surprised, because before he demanded that she report everything down to the smallest detail. She doesn't understand why his reaction has changed so much now, and says that she will leave the gentleman then. She's about to go to Victor and tell him to disguise himself better, but at that very moment, the crown prince furiously asks who let her go in the first place. He adds that he has an important task, so he can forget about the weekend. Sometime later, the day of the banquet at Count Arlo's residence arrives. One of the women sighs heavily, wondering how boring it will be there. At that moment, someone approaches her, greets her, and asks if Madame Prescia is there too. The woman greets her interlocutors with a tense, polite smile and recalls His Highness's order. He told her to be sure to attend the banquet, to approach Lady Florine, and to keep a close eye on the situation so she could help if anything went wrong. He made it clear that he was going to use this girl and would be watching everything from near the hall. The woman realizes that working overtime is inhumane. Meanwhile, one of the ladies admires the roses in Count Arlo's house. Her interlocutor replies that she also came specifically for these roses. Madame Prescia wonders if they really came just for the flowers. She notices one of the ladies look away and knows she just needs to watch these three. One girl whispers to another whether she has arrived yet. The second replies no, adding that she is curious about Lady Florine's new partner. She also wonders if she will appear with a mysterious lover. Madame Prescia suggests that the lady might come with a relative, Sir Geraldine, or without any accompaniment at all, since very little time had passed since the break with Sir Michael. The appearance of another man would only give rise to new rumors, so this option seems the safest. One of the ladies agrees, and Madame Prescia wonders if Lady Floriane has heard her thoughts. and mentally asks her to come just like that. Another lady remarks that in that case they will never know who Lady Florian's secret lover is. The woman reasons that the easiest thing would be to find someone who wears cufflinks, and understands that this is exactly what His Highness wants. She silently wonders if she's smart enough. At that moment, one of the ladies announces that Sir Michael has also arrived at the banquet. Another woman confirms she saw him, and he's just as charming. She says he smiled at her with his eyes, and Madame Prescia understands that this man has the ability to give hope to anyone. She thinks that Mikhail has sunk too low and asks if they are waiting for the upcoming performance. The woman understands that the main characters will be two former lovers who will meet again in this room. One of the ladies asks what will happen if Mikhail also runs into the owner of the cufflinks. Madame Prescia realizes she's unlikely to be able to stop it. Another girl asks impatiently when Lady Florian will arrive. At this time, Mikhail is nearby and thinks about what nonsense they are talking about. Everyone is waiting to see who Jubelian will show up with. Meanwhile, she's riding in a carriage with her father. The Duke says that rumors have reached him too, and he knows that there will be backbiting in the hall. He asks Jubelian not to worry, because he will be by her side today. After some time, the coachman announces that they have arrived. The Duke steps out of the carriage and offers his hand to his daughter. She hesitantly takes it and follows him out. At that very moment, someone notices the Duke and is surprised by his presence. One of the aristocrats asks if the Duke himself has become the lady's partner, but the doorman asks everyone to calm down. He announces the arrival of the Empire's hero, Duke Regis Audrey Florian, and his daughter, Lady Jubelian Eloy Florian. One of the aristocrats remarks that the rumors were true. The Duke truly is magnificent. Another adds that he hasn't been seen in a long time and hasn't changed at all. Jubelian thinks no one could be a better partner than her father, the Empire's most handsome man. But his presence ruins all her plans. She understands less and less about her father's true intentions. At that moment, he pulls her closer. He asks her to be careful and not to stumble when taking her hand. Aristocrats notice the sapphire cufflinks on his sleeves and recognize them as the very same ones. Everyone understands it was a gift for the Duke. Someone whispers, "Do they really believe it?" There are talks about counterfeiting and that they have money, so buying another pair is not a problem. People decide that the Duke is simply trying to save his daughter's reputation. But the Duke turns sharply to the gossip, and he immediately falls silent. The man thinks how dare they denigrate his daughter's precious gift. Mikhail wonders if it was she who gave them to the Duke, and he realizes that this is indeed the case. He is convinced that she cannot have another man and that she has not forgotten him. The main character notices how beautifully and comfortably the house is furnished. She decides to take note of this design for her own future home. The lady looks around carefully, and the father suggests not to worry and just enjoy the evening. Jubelian is surprised because she was only thinking about the future. Her father reminds her whose daughter she is, and she understands that she will not forget. She is the daughter of Duke Regis Audrey Florian, a hero of the Empire and a master swordsman, so she calmly enjoys the banquet and mentally asks for forgiveness. At this moment, guests approach the Duke and greet him and his daughter. Among them is Rose Marie, Count Arlo's daughter. Her mother says their presence is a great honor. Rose hesitantly approaches the lady and then grabs her hands. She thanks him with a smile for coming, admitting that she really wanted to see Jubelian. The main character smiles and realizes how charming Rose is, after which she congratulates her on her birthday. She holds out a small gift, and the aristocrats immediately guess what it is. When the item is opened, one assumes it is powder, while another is surprised by its size and the mirror. Rose asks if this is really compact powder. Jubelian is worried about whether she liked it. She thinks that girls usually carry entire sets of cosmetics with them, and this option may not be necessary. But Rose exclaims in delight that this is amazing and is surprised that no one thought of this before. One of the aristocrats agrees, calling it something new, while the other says that she is seeing something like this for the first time. They note that the powder compact is easy to put in a clutch and always carry with you, and makeup can be touched up without the help of servants. At this moment, everyone realizes that they also want such a thing for themselves. Rose asks Lady Florian which workshop made the powder, because her mother wants one too. The aristocrats are wondering who will reveal the secret of such a revolutionary thing. Jubelian calmly replies that this is Fyodor's workshop, and although he is silent, he can be trusted. Aristocrats are shocked, because such secrets are usually kept hidden. They think Lady Florian is a true angel. The ball continues, and Jubelian steps aside. After some time, she realizes that she is finally alone. She expected this, because she feels uncomfortable among the crowd and endless questions. At that moment, someone watches her from a tree. The man suddenly becomes shocked. He sees the girl start to cry. Jubilian realizes he can't hold back any longer. As soon as she takes a breath, tears flow like a river. She is terribly tired. At that moment, someone comes down from the tree and asks why she is crying. Turning around, she sees that same student of her father. Jubilian is puzzled as to what he is doing here and is about to ask, but the guy wipes away her tears and asks her not to cry, saying that he doesn't know what happened. He asks if anyone dared to offend her and is ready to deal with that person. The girl is surprised, realizing that he appeared out of nowhere and is saying strange things. She asks if he'll intervene if she's truly been wronged. He replies that he will, because he promised to help. Jubilian is pleased by his words, but understands that if he goes too far, he could fall into eternal sleep. If a commoner addresses a nobleman informally, they will face severe punishment. This is how the power of the nobility is demonstrated. For him, this is a direct path to the next world. She understands that she has already become attached to him and will not allow him to take such a risk. Jubilian says that if he wants to help, he must stop addressing everyone informally. He should be especially respectful in front of other people. The guy asks why this is necessary. She explains that his words can bring both allies and enemies. Nobles are sensitive to forms of address, and it's unknown whether this system will ever disappear, so respect is essential. In private, he can address her informally. If he respects her, then those around him will do the same. The lady asks if he understands, and the guy replies that he does. She asks what he's doing at the banquet. He replies that it's work. In fact, he came because of Jubilian, and she wonders if he was hired as temporary security. The brunette asks why she's alone and where her partner is. She replies that her father is in the room. He is surprised, because she said that she would choose a relative. Jubilian tells how her father decided to go with her, and that's how it all worked out. The boy asks about dancing, because the music is playing, and she's alone. She realizes that she has never been asked to dance, and this is not surprising. This is largely because of his father, and the brunette realizes that for the first time he is worried about someone. He extends his hand to her, and Jubilian asks why. Max shyly explains that he is asking her to dance. Jubilian asks if he can dance, enjoying the moment, and extends his hand in response. The guy says that it is a great honor for her because he doesn't dance with just anyone. Jubilian, observing him, realizes that he is truly handsome. She replies that it is an honor for her too, although she is certain that she will have to lead the dance. However, the brunette suddenly takes the initiative, and she is surprised at how confidently he moves. The dance continues, and the lady continues to marvel at his skill. Clearly, he's no beginner. Suddenly, she trips and starts to fall. The brunette immediately warns her of the danger and asks her to pull herself together. He grabs her hand and only then realizes how close they are. The guy is embarrassed, realizing that this is not what he came here for, but the distance between them still decreases. Suddenly, there is the sound of a glass breaking. The man sharply demands that the boy move away from her immediately. They both turn around. They see the Duke, who asks what's going on. He realizes this is the first time he's tried to spend some quiet time with his daughter. Just recently, the aristocrats irritated him, and he thought how tired he was of it all. He noticed Jubilian come out onto the terrace and wondered if she was okay, deciding that she was just tired. Mikhail also noticed how Jubilian went to a secluded place and wondered if this was a hint for him. He was about to follow her, but suddenly he felt someone's gaze on him. It was the Duke, and Mikhail wondered in shock if the attitude towards him had really changed so abruptly. He decided that the reason could be the breakup with his daughter. The Duke, looking at Mikhail, thinks what a piece of trash he is. The boy turns away and curses silently. The man recalls a letter in which Mikhail wrote that he would agree to meet with Jubilian again if she asked for forgiveness. The Duke reflects on how vile this guy is and notices him making his way through the crowd. He decides that this is for the best, because now nothing will prevent his daughter from enjoying the banquet. Suddenly, he hears Jubilian asking if the man can dance. The Duke realizes that there is someone else next to her, and it is a man. He admits that he didn't notice him right away, but the guy is clearly talented. The Duke thinks he will find out later what family he comes from, but then he hears his daughter's scream. In horror, he rushes towards her, fearing that something bad has happened. Opening the door, he sees the two of them and demands that this impudent fellow immediately move away from her. He remembers how Mikhail, as a child, said that he would not thank him. He claimed that the Duke was helping only because of an oath and a promise to take him as a student. The man thinks that if you take away his appearance and skills, then Mikhail is just an arrogant young man with a disgusting character. Despite this, he took him under his guardianship, fulfilling the last will of the late Empress. The Duke is outraged that he dared to look at Jubilian. At this point, the girl looks at her father's hand and takes it in her own. She asks worriedly if he's okay. The Duke smiles, and Jubilian notices the wine and blood on his hand, wondering how to handle it. The father says that he will deal with it later and suggests leaving. From the expression on his face, the girl understands that he has calmed down a little. However, she feels that he is squeezing her hand too tightly. At that moment, someone grabs her other hand. Max says that she seems to have injured her leg, but the Duke immediately pushes him away. He states that it is none of his business, since we are talking about his daughter. The Duke picks up Jubilian and says that he will deal with everything from now on himself. He orders them not to come to the mansion again. Max watches them leave in silence. Jubilian realizes that his father, usually a cold observer, is suddenly showing such concern. She realizes that she doesn't know him well, but she remembers the Duke's words that all this is because she is his daughter. The girl decides to give up hope, realizing how it will all end. They walk out into the banquet hall, and Jubilian is shocked to realize that her father is carrying her across the hall. She says that everything is fine and there is no need to carry her, but he replies that her leg is injured. He insists that she shouldn't strain herself, although she doesn't think that's the issue at all. She feels terribly awkward and mentally begs everyone to stop looking at her. Later, someone asks the Duke what happened to Lady Florine. He replies that his daughter is ill and they are leaving. A little later, one aristocrat is indignant at how it was possible to cause such a commotion at someone else's party. Another suggests that the lady simply wanted to attract attention, and knowing her character, this is quite possible. But then someone reminds us that everyone has forgotten about Lady Florine's illness. This is what Ms. Rose says, believing that Jubilian has not yet fully recovered and showed generosity by coming to the party. She asks if the others agree, and they immediately nod. Some add that Lady Florian was always in poor health, and even lost consciousness. Another woman remarks that now it's clear why she's so pale. Mikhail hears this and becomes thoughtful. He realizes that she may not have been faking her illness, and remembers how she asked him to wait. He realizes that Jubilian always looked exhausted around him. He had previously thought it was an attempt to attract attention, but now he felt a strange pain in his chest. At this time, Jubilian is in the residence, and her father says that the doctor recommended that she rest. He adds that she should stay indoors for a few days. He asks her to rest and call him immediately if she feels ill. Jubilian wonders why his father has changed so much. He used to be cold, but now he acts like a caring parent. She doesn't understand why he should even worry about her condition. Then she realizes that there is still a benefit, because in order to marry the crown prince, her health must be perfect. The lady was sure that breaking up with Mikhail would delay her descent into eternal sleep. But instead of Mikhail, her father is now trying to force the crown prince on her. She understands that she cannot allow this, otherwise her life will end. Jubilian decides that her father must understand that she is not going to get married. At this time, the crown prince is sitting in a flourishing salon and does not understand why this girl cannot leave his mind. He thinks about what would have happened if he had come even closer then, but suddenly realizes his thoughts. He shakes his head, not understanding what's happening to him. Madame Prescia watches. She notices that he has become even stranger since the banquet. At this point, he turns to her. He orders that an invitation be sent in his name and that she herself come up with a reason for the meeting. Madame Prescia replies that if the addressee is Lady Florine, it will not be easy to do. When asked why, she explains that the lady is now extremely popular in society. At this point, Jubilian looks at the stack of papers and asks what they are. Marilyn replies that they are letters for her. The lady wonders if these are invitations, despite the rumors and criticism after the banquet. She suggests that the publicity surrounding the workshop helped change her image, thanks Marilyn, and lets her go. Jubilian decides to use any excuse to refuse banquets, citing health reasons. At this moment, the maid announces that the butler has handed over a letter that needs to be answered first. Jubilian sees that the letter is from Count Herend, the family of the late Empress. She understands that such letters came to her father, but they had not contacted her before. She puts the letter on the table, not wanting to answer now, fearing that her father is preparing a meeting with the crown prince. Jubilian racks his brains, unable to find a way out, and remembers the man his father recognized. Suddenly, she hears a knock on the window and turns around. She sees the crown prince asking for the door to be opened. Jubelian thinks he's clearly having trouble with the doors. She doubts whether she should open it, because her father said that he would find it himself if necessary. The guy seems to her like a street cat who follows passers-by in the hope of food. Suddenly, she realizes that this is exactly what she needs, opens the window and pulls him inside. She greets him, but suddenly bumps into his chest. The brunette asks worriedly if everything is okay. The girl replies that it is. She asks if he wants to do something, and Max doesn't understand what she's talking about. Jubelian talks about starting a relationship. Max is shocked to realize she's asking them out. He can't believe he's hearing this from a girl he's only known for a week. He is overwhelmed by the thought of a romantic relationship with her. Max thinks that maybe she always had feelings for him. He decides that if this is what she wants, then he agrees, even thinking about the future. He can hardly contain his smile and thinks that twins would be very cute. Jubelian says he misunderstood her. She explains that she means a contractual relationship. The brunette asks if that's true. Jubelian looks at him and realizes that he is handsome, strong, and acknowledged by her father, making him ideal for the role of her lover. The guy says that a relationship is still a relationship and doesn't understand what any contract has to do with it. The girl explains that he just needs to cooperate with her, but the brunette clearly doesn't like this. The lady sees his expression and understands that he is not in the mood to listen to her calmly. For a wandering mercenary without a home, time is money, and he is only interested in profit. Jubelian offers to pay him any amount if he agrees to enter into a relationship with her. The brunette wonders who she takes him for, and the lady doesn't understand what exactly irritates him. Jubelian adds that the relationship is temporary and will only last until she becomes independent from this house. The guy wonders if she really wants independence and is ready to live without the support of her family. He asks why she is going through all this trouble and wonders if she remembers their previous conversation. After all, she said that her father had compiled a list of suitors and had already made a choice. Max suggests simply telling her father that she doesn't like him, but the girl replies that people like that aren't turned down. The brunette wonders who this man is, since the duke's daughter cannot refuse him. Jubelian hesitates and asks him to keep the secret. She warns that if anyone finds out, there will be big problems, and the guy promises to keep quiet. He asks her to speak calmly, and the girl falls silent for a moment. Then she calls the name Maximilian Keshin Asset, and the guy is about to say something, but she adds that this is the crown prince of the empire, and he freezes. Max, confused, asks if the crown prince is really on the list, and the lady confirms it. The guy says it's impossible, and Jubelian doesn't understand what's strange about that. In terms of status, their family comes immediately after the imperial family, and this is also beneficial for the father. In addition, the lady remembers the founder of the empire, the supreme mage Asset. He solved the people's problems with the help of magic, and therefore his descendants are revered as gods. Reverence for the imperial family gave her absolute power. Jubelian explains that she cannot be the first to reject a suitor from the imperial family. Otherwise, it will be considered a rebellion. Therefore, before talking about seeing someone, she must show that she is already dating someone. The father is smart enough and will not offer the prince a daughter who has a lover. Max wonders if she really dislikes him that much and asks what if the prince doesn't care. After all, you can't know for sure, and suddenly he'll like her. The lady is frightened by this thought, and the guy adds that such a marriage is beneficial. After all, her husband will become the ruler of the empire and will be able to give her everything. Jubelian looks at his serious face and thinks. She says that she will run away anyway because she does not want to marry a tyrant and sadist. The man is shocked, and the lady does not understand what is happening to him. The brunette says that he understands everything and leaves without waiting for her words. Jubelian wonders why he left so quickly without even answering. After a while, the brunette returns to the flourishing salon and loudly slams the door. He sits down on the sofa, and Madame Prescia is surprised by his early return and mood. She asks if something happened, but he only wants to know the meaning of running away from her fiancé. Madame Prescia explains that this means a strong hatred for the chosen man. The guy wonders if she really hates him. The woman suggests that the reason for his mood is his meeting with Lady Florine, but he abruptly cuts her off. She asks if he proposed to her. And didn't Lady Florine say she wanted to run away? To which he replies irritably. He clarifies that it was Jubelian who proposed to him, and the woman is surprised. The guy changes the subject and asks if there is any news from the emperor. They tell him that everything remains unchanged, and they still require him to return. Madame Precia reports that the Empress has sent an assassin again and asks for instructions. The boy remembers his stepmother, who was involved in putting his mother into eternal sleep. He is thinking about what to do this time. Eliminate the assassin or respond in kind by sending a message to the Empress. Jubelian's words about escaping from the tyrant come to mind. He orders the assassin's life to be spared, which greatly surprises the woman. She carries out the order, and the guy suddenly asks about marriage proposals. Madame Precia replies that nothing has happened yet and promises to let her know. She asks why he is interested, but he remains silent. He gets up and leaves, and the woman realizes how difficult it has become to look after him. Meanwhile, Jubelian sits at the table and has dinner with his father for the first time in a long time. She feels awkward and regrets that she didn't hold on to Max. The Duke turns to her, and the girl mentally asks him not to talk about the bride show. But her father asks her opinion about the crown prince, and she turns pale. Jubelian replies that she never thought about him and tries to change the subject. She recalls a book about the founding of the empire and the artifacts of the first emperor. The Duke freezes, and the girl asks if they are still being presented. The man stands up abruptly and says that he has urgent business. Jubelian is surprised by his behavior because he is not used to leaving like that. The Duke comes out and realizes that he could not restrain himself when he realized his daughter's interest in the imperial family. He knows that even a small detail can complicate things. He thinks about her meeting with Max and realizes that she doesn't know about the prince's reputation. For the sake of Jubelian's happiness, he cannot allow this. The girl comes out to her father and asks if he is here. She explains that she noticed a strange expression on his face and became worried. In fact, she was afraid that she had done something wrong. The Duke smiles, throws his jacket over her, and sends her inside because of the cold. Jubelian is shocked by his smile, and her father advises her to learn more about the crown prince. She wonders if this is the man who might have to be put into eternal sleep. Understanding her father's plans, she nevertheless agrees with a smile. She wishes him good night and leaves. The Duke decides that he will not allow this marriage, and Jubelian makes a decision. She will again offer Max a contractual relationship. Lying at the table, she feels driven and exhausted. The maid brings a letter, apologizing for the late visit. A letter from Rose, wishing you a speedy recovery. Jubelian is touched by the care and surprised by such attention. She notices an invitation to a tea party and thinks about going. At the same time, she decides to find out rumors about the prince. Later, Rose reports that Lady Florane has responded. She is glad that Jubelian has made a full recovery. The rest say with relief that they were very worried. Rose adds that Lady Florane wants to come and asks the others for their opinion. The girls happily agree and look forward to meeting. Rose suggests having tea at Veronica's and asks if she's okay with it. Veronica freezes, realizing that guests will come to her. She agrees, and Rose promises to inform Jubelian. Later, Veronica is outraged by such unceremoniousness. Her interlocutor says that he is tired and suggests discussing it later. The girl gets upset and clarifies that we are talking about Lady Florane. The guy is surprised and asks again if she really will come. Veronica confirms and does not understand how everything happened. The guy comes up to her, grabs a strand of her hair, and asks her to invite him. He says he's worried about Veronica, and she freezes, embarrassed. Then she confidently agrees and thanks him. The guy only grins in response. He realizes he will finally meet Jubelian. A little later, the protagonist finds herself on an arcade street. The girl realizes the meeting is informal, but she needs to look formal. Today, she has one goal: choosing the right outfit. At the same time, the lady notices that her father has once again assigned her numerous bodyguards. She worries whether she will be able to go shopping in peace now. Looking at the dresses, Jubelian realizes she needs something better. But when you look at one of them, it becomes clear that this is too much, even though this style is currently in fashion. Jubelian ponders what to do, since every store has the same stuff. She's unsure whether she should blindly follow trends. At this moment, a stranger approaches her and remarks that she herself would not wear such a dress. It turns out to be Madame Precia. The woman is pleased to see him and, it seems, has also gone shopping. Jubelian wonders how she knows her. The lady agrees to listen to the advice, and one of the knights thinks that at last a man has been found who is sincerely kind to the lady. The lady says the lady's figure is thin and fragile, and this style doesn't suit her. There's no point in enduring discomfort for the sake of fashion. This outfit doesn't accentuate her natural elegance. The girl agrees, thanks him for the advice, and promises to take it into account. Madame smiles, thinking she now understands why His Highness is so captivated by Lady Florane. She's even more beautiful up close, and that will certainly please the Duke. The main character realizes that thanks to Madame Prisha, she has finally figured out what she needs. After a while, the shopping spree comes to an end. The lady is satisfied, the order is custom designed, and she can return home. But suddenly she hears a cry that some guy dared to harm a nobleman and must immediately apologize. The lady thinks it's just another guy trying to flatter his pride. Looking closer, she recognizes Baron Gordon, a notorious scoundrel. At that very moment, another voice declares that the Baron fell through his own fault, and there's no need to apologize. The speech is rough and confident, the kind that instantly puts you in your place. Jubelian realizes, with shock, that this is her father's apprentice. The Baron is indignant at his tone and demands to know who this insolent man is. He shouts for the insolent commoner to be arrested immediately. The boy thinks it would be easier to put him into eternal sleep, but under arrest, that will be a problem. At this moment, the main character steps forward and demands to stop. The Baron asks in surprise if she is Duke Florane's daughter. Jubelian introduces himself on behalf of the Duke and states his name. The man bows quickly and declares his pleasure at paying his respects to the Grand Duke's daughter. The girl says she knows Baron Gordon and invites him to look up. He is amazed that his name is known in this house. He decides that the day is turning out well and begins to shower him with pleasantries, considering the meeting a sign of fate. Jubelian coldly remarks that it seems her luck has turned against her today. The Baron is taken aback and asks if he did something wrong. The girl sees how insolence is replaced by obsequiousness and declares that in the name of her father, she forbids him to persecute her people. At first, Max hears the wrong word, but Jubelian quietly explains that he is simply saving him from the nobleman. The man realizes his mistake, and the girl loudly adds that the Baron was threatening her personal knight, who served the Duke. The knights are confused, and the lady asks if he really thinks he can get away with insulting the knight Florane. The brunette thinks she called him her personal knight and is disappointed to realize that he is just her man. The Baron screams that he was pushed, and this was also accompanied by disrespect for the nobleman. In fact, it all started with the Baron. The ladies were discussing the handsome man, who looked like he'd descended from Olympus. The attention to Max offended Gordon, and he decided to make fun of him, but Max gave in and responded rudely. The Baron demands compensation, hinting at money. Jubelian understands he's simply trying to make a buck. It's impossible to reason with people like that. The girl sighs deeply and asks the Baron to be understanding. She explains that the knight grew up in the mountains and does not know the local rules, and she takes responsibility. The Baron calls her honest and asks for the amount. The prince feels an itch to wring his neck. Jubelian says the Baron may show her the same disdain that her knight showed him. The man is stunned and the lady demands it be done immediately. The Baron, horrified, asks how he can do such a thing. The brunette observes and understands that behind the external innocence lies a strong character. The Baron spitefully thinks that she is an idiot, but he knows perfectly well that he cannot break etiquette. He claims he caused the commotion himself and asks for forgiveness. The lady remarks that the apology should be addressed not to her, but to the knight. The Baron clenches his fists, but apologizes to Max, thinking that he bowed before a commoner. He is angered by his own submissiveness, even despite Lady Florane's patronage. The prince looks at him with disdain, and the Baron, frightened, hurries away. Max thinks about what the lady called him and how she saved his life. Jubelian asks if he is okay and if he is scared. Max thinks that she clearly underestimates him, but he is still grateful for her help. He remembers her request that he address her respectfully in front of other people. Jubelian notices his silence. Brunette takes her hand and thanks Lady Florane for saving him. The other ladies are delighted, and Jubelian realizes that he is trying to be polite because of her request. Max says the situation was unpleasant, but he's glad he was able to talk to her. The girl asks about what. He replies that he agrees to a contractual relationship. Jubelian immediately shuts him up and asks him to wait. Those around them begin to whisper, deciding that there is something more connecting them. Jubelian is embarrassed and leads him away. In the carriage, she admits she'd already considered refusing. She asks why he changed his mind. Max remembers her words about the prince and loneliness. He understands that the tyrant she hates is himself, but he cannot open up. The girl asks why he was outside and why he didn't have any purchases. Max responds sharply, and Jubilian is irritated by his tone. He remembers Madame Precia's words about the tea party and Mikhail. The Crown Prince ponders a possible meeting between the exes and decides to intervene. Upon learning that Jubilian is not in the mansion, he goes to see her. He decides to stay close and not let Mikhail get close. Jubilian notices his gloomy appearance and offers to discuss the contract. Max asks why she chose him. She replies that he is a student approved by her father. The guy thinks it's not about sympathy, and this hurts him, but the girl adds that she feels truly comfortable with him. Max becomes embarrassed and decides that's enough. Jubilian admits that he has a difficult character, but she likes his appearance and moves on to the conditions. As soon as the conversation turns to money, the guy becomes gloomy. He refuses payment, citing a debt. Jubilian jokingly calls him too kind. She offers him accommodation and food. Max agrees and asks her to let go of his hand. Jubilian reminds that they will be playing lovers. She explains that they will have to hold hands and call each other affectionately. Max agrees, and she notices that he already knows her name. Jubilian is surprised by this and asks if his name is Max. He confirms, and the girl notes the meaning of his name and his attractiveness. She compliments the name, and the conversation returns to the contract. Max doubts its necessity, and Jubilian thinks about his father's strictness. She explains the importance of the document and, jokingly, threatens the consequences. Max says she wouldn't do that, and Jubilian remembers her bad reputation. She notes that most often, it is those whom people trust who deceive. The girl advises to always conclude contracts in writing. Max agrees, and she thinks that she will still teach him a lot. Jubilian says they need to kiss before signing. Max is shocked, but understands that it is inevitable. She explains that this is necessary for a legend, but they are distracted by the sound. It turns out the carriage simply bounced. Max returns to the topic of the kiss. He asks about her plan when they are called out. Jubilian apologizes and introduces him as her lover. The knights are amazed and doubt her choice. She tells with a smile about the meeting at Count Meisen's banquet. Max thinks about her guesses about his status. Jubilian explains that he was a hired guard. The knights are shocked. One of them asks how the mercenary managed to get close to the lady. Max endures it for the sake of the plan. He remembers the discussion of the legend and agrees with it. The story of salvation must look different, and he simply nods along. According to Jubilian, it was she who saved him, and everything worked out well. Max confirms that she is his benefactor, and the knights exchange distrustful glances. And it seems that within this gloomy brute lurks a helpless kitten. The protagonist admits that he didn't capture her heart right away. That happened later, when fate brought them together again at a banquet in Count Arlo's residence. And then again during an unexpected encounter on an arcaded street. The main character asks in surprise if this is really the same man, and even offers to accompany him. One of the knights wonders what fate is even being discussed, and whether the lady chose him simply because of his pretty face. Jubilian steps on the same rake again. After this, the main character asks them to wait. The knights' faces clearly show their disdain for her beloved because of his origins. The knights immediately respond that this is not true. Jubilian counters and asks where exactly this is not true, as she clearly noticed their frightening grimaces directed at him. The knights think she should turn around, as the man keeps glaring at them. One of them realizes he's giving off a very unusual aura. Who is he anyway? Because this energy seems vaguely familiar. At that moment, the main character takes the guy's arm and quietly whispers that it's almost over, drawing his attention to the way his hands are shaking. The lady asks if everything is okay. The guy replies that everything is fine. Then the girl assures him that no matter what happens, she will definitely protect him. Max just smiles, realizing that, oddly enough, this pleases him. But when they meet the Duke, he drops his teacup in surprise and turns to his daughter in shock. The girl calmly tells her father that she wants to formally introduce him to her beloved. Max understands that this love puts his life in danger. The Duke recalls how everything was as usual this morning. He even assigned knights to Jubilian. He was only slightly alarmed by the withered flower in the living room, but he still planned to have a quiet dinner. However, upon his return, his daughter announced she wanted to introduce him to her lover. The girl realizes she would have told him anyway. She just wanted to make it more convincing, but she still didn't expect such a reaction. She's surprised by her father's expression, which is even angrier than she imagined. She asks Max to say hello and if they know each other. In response, The man simply turns to Jubelian and demands to know what's going on. The main character wonders if the man who had been indifferent to all her antics could now be so furious. Of course, he's upset that she won't marry his chosen candidate, and as a replacement, she chose his prized student. The girl repeats that everything is exactly as she said because they have decided to enter into a formal relationship. She understands that her father's plan is falling apart. The Duke, shocked, wonders how this could have happened and reproaches himself for his lack of vigilance. He's convinced the scoundrel shouldn't have even come near his daughter. Soon they move into the living room. The brunette pulls out a chair for the lady, and the main character thanks him. The Duke watches and thinks, what a scoundrel this guy is, how dare he deceive his daughter like that. Maximilian's intentions are obvious to him. Just recently, he'd yelled at the boy to stop immediately. He'd then declared him no longer their comrade, called him a cowardly traitor, and wanted to show his body to the others as a lesson. The Duke remembers this and realizes the kind of man he's dealing with. For Max, Jubelian is merely a tool, a way to remove him from the path and hasten the uprising. After this, the man asks how they met in the first place. The main character realizes that this is where it all began. If Geraldine and the other knights believed her words, it wouldn't work with her father. The best solution was to skillfully mix truth and lies. The girl says that on the day when her father was away, the boy came to visit and, not finding him, turned to her. It was too late to send him home, so she put him to bed in her room. The Duke, shocked, wonders if they really slept in the same room. The girl immediately denies anything, and the man, looking at the boy, wonders irritably if he even dares to nod. Of course, nothing should have happened, but in the Duke's mind, this guy still looks like a scoundrel. If he had touched her with even a finger, he would never have left that mansion. The man notes that his daughter could have told Derek about the guest, and he would have been given a separate room. The main character replies that it was too late, she was embarrassed to call him, and even more so to go to the knights. Besides, she decided that her father's student would definitely not cause her any problems. The Duke wonders why she got involved with the most dangerous man in the country. He tried to change this guy many times, but Max had long since become a cruel tyrant. If that didn't change, his ruthlessness would lead to disaster. He might not only harm his daughter, but things could end much worse. She might not even realize her life is in danger, and the man blames himself. The lady turns to her father and admits that she is ashamed to say this, but before she only suffered from unrequited love. So the fact that someone dear to her likes her seems a true miracle. She understands that she has lived too chaotically, and her father may not believe her, but he promises not to tarnish his name. She asks him to consent to their relationship. The man understands her words, but thinks it's not enough. He remembers little Jubelian and realizes that she is his beloved daughter, for whom he is ready to endure any pain. If she wants something, he is ready to do anything. But now he answers that he cannot agree to this relationship. The Duke firmly declares that he will not allow her to meet with this man and orders her to break up with him. Jubelian understands that her father seriously intends to marry her off to the crown prince, a cruel and insane tyrant. She thinks that an alliance with the imperial family is more beneficial for him than saving his own daughter's reputation. She doesn't know what to do, but at that moment, someone takes her hand. Turning around, she sees Max. The guy says that he doesn't want to part with her, and the Duke shudders at these words. Max reminds the teacher of important words and asks if he remembers them. He said that the art of the sword is needed to protect what is dear, and that a person gains strength by protecting his weakness. Someday, he too will find his weak spot and someone he wants to protect. The guy takes the lady by the shoulders and says that it seems he has already found both his weakness and the one he wants to protect. The main character thinks he should act in the theater, he's so convincing in his role. The guy declares that even the Duke won't be able to separate them, but the man orders her to stop this nonsense. He reminds her that he called his daughter a mouse, and now he says she's precious to him. Jubelian understands that it's impossible to reason with his father. The brunette declares that if he continues to object, he will not sit idly by either, and he does not care that he is a teacher. The Duke replies that in that case, he no longer considers him his student. Jubelian is shocked, wondering how things turned out this way. Max apologizes and says he didn't want this to happen. He suggests that Jubelian leave. She doesn't understand why they had such a falling out and broke up. At that moment, the Duke orders them to stop and grabs the guy by the shoulder. The brunette replies that they shouldn't dare give him orders. The girl realizes that everything has gone wrong. The situation has gone too far and feels disrespectful to her father. If they simply leave, it will look like a couple running away, so she asks her father to calm down and promises to sort things out herself. The man, seeing her gaze, steps back and watches her leave silently. The girl walks with Max and asks him to stop for a moment. She says it's important. The guy stops and asks what she wants to say. The girl thanks him for his support, but admits that what she said to her father was too much. The brunette replies that he was just helping. The protagonist asks if he really thinks he's doing what she wants. She explains that she didn't want him to refuse to be her father's apprentice, and even more so, she didn't want him to be rude to her. It wasn't help, but a disservice, dictated by pride. The guy asks if this means his help is no longer needed. The girl takes his hand and says that she needs help, but because of his methods, she has to look for another way to solve the problem. The guy asks what she wants from him. She replies that they need to make peace with their father. Max is shocked and asks if this is true. She says someone should apologize first. The guy wants to object, but seeing her expression, he falls silent. The girl understands how much this hurts his pride. She is not going to force him and believes that this is her problem, so asking for more would be wrong. But unexpectedly, the guy agrees and says he'll apologize. The main character can't believe her ears, and the Duke is surprised too. Jubelian thanks him with a smile. His father wonders if this guy has really changed. After some time, they return to the Duke. The girl apologizes for leaving abruptly and says that Max wants to say something. The man realizes he's been watching this guy for 10 years and knows he's not inclined to change. However, Max sincerely apologizes for his words and actions. The Duke recalls how he recently asked about weakness, and he can't believe it. He's sure it's part of the plan, to exploit even his daughter. He thinks he won't let this happen, and asks what will happen if he no longer has a student. The boy understands that everything is now clear. From the teacher's reaction, he realizes he never intended for his daughter to marry him. He doesn't know where the lady got this misconception and sees no reason to dispel it. The protagonist realizes they won't get anywhere this way and decides to move on to plan B. She falls to her knees and begs for forgiveness, taking the blame. Both men look at her in shock. She realizes her plan is to tearfully beg for forgiveness while simultaneously insisting on their relationship. Luckily, there's a carpet on the floor, so the fall isn't as painful. Max says he should be the one apologizing and asks her to get up. Jubelian thinks he can't even imagine how scary his father is when he's angry. She says she won't get up until this conversation is over. The Duke replies that he understands everything and invites her to rise and continue the conversation. He even notices that the floor is cold. The Crown Prince supports his words. The girl understands that they could have gotten along if her father had accepted his apology. The lady says Max was rude because he loved her so much and that she will take care of him. The Duke agrees and forgives her, surprising the girl. He asks her to rise, and soon the three are sitting at the table. The lady is surprised at how quickly everything was resolved. The father says he forgives her mistake, but she still doesn't consent to their relationship. Jubelian understands that this is exactly what she expected. She asks him not to give a definitive answer right away, and to at least observe them for a while. The Duke understands her wishes, but still does not want this union. He decides that love is blind, and when she discovers Max's true nature, she will abandon him herself. So he agrees. The Crown Prince is surprised by his stubborn mentor's decision. The heroine is delighted and thanks her father. The man thinks how hard it is to lie to such a naive child, but convinces himself that he is doing it to protect her. Later, the girl is in her room and considers herself really smart because she was able to get permission from her cold-blooded father. She invites Max to discuss the points of their contract and asks if he has any special requirements. The guy drinks tea, and the heroine is surprised by his manners, even wondering if he ran away from an aristocratic family. But the brunette suddenly asks how anyone can drink it. The girl doesn't understand, because a man who doesn't know the taste of tea can't be an aristocrat. Meanwhile, he writes something and hands her a sheet of paper. She reads that her contract prohibits her from seeing other men. The lady laughs, realizing he simply doesn't want to share her with anyone. When she tries to speak, he interrupts and says that there is another point about the name. It says that every time she sees Max, she should call him by his name. The girl considers this perfectly normal. She suggests that he call her by her first name, and he agrees. She then decides to tidy up the document and correct the grammar. After editing the text, she realizes the requirements need to be worded differently. In desperation, she asks him to read it and make some edits. The man takes the sheet of paper and declares he can't agree to it, then tears up the contract. Jubelian is shocked by how easily he destroyed her work. If you don't like something, you can just say so. She thinks about how Max often treated her without respect. After days of caring, he vanished without a word. His habit of disappearing without answering questions is appalling. He is constantly irritated, and before she turned a blind eye to this because nothing connected them. But the contract requires constant communication, and if they can't come to an agreement now, things will only get worse. She declares that she considers the contract terminated. The guy is surprised and says he didn't expect such a serious document. He was particularly outraged by the clause about meetings in public places, which is why he broke the contract. He says they can't give up. After all, they've done so much to gain their father's consent. He reminds her that she hates the crown prince. This tyrant is a real piece of trash, and without a contract, she'll have no choice. The girl replies that if they can't come to an agreement from the start, things will only get worse. They'll just get tired of each other. The guy thinks this is a hasty conclusion, but she's sure it's because he's unwilling to compromise. With this approach, there can be no equitable agreement. The boy is about to object, but remembers his youth, how he scattered papers and demanded that they be redone, easily tearing up documents. This habit stuck, and no one ever reprimanded him. The girl asks if he likes it when his opinions are simply ignored. The girl admits that this is incredibly frustrating for her. Not being seen as an equal is a huge blow to her self-esteem and ruins her mood for the entire day. The guy asks if she means to say that his actions ruined her day. The lady honestly answers that she does, and that she's really having a hard time right now. Brunette thinks he's actually helping her, and doesn't understand why he has to monitor her every move. Jubilian says that since it's impossible to reach an agreement with him, she's decided to end everything, since the contract was originally at her request. At that moment, something inside the guy snaps. He realizes that if he continues to insist, he could lose her forever. But he still tries to convince himself that he doesn't care. However, upon seeing her sad face, he immediately admits he was wrong. A little later, the guy asks if simply signing the document is enough. The girl agrees and is surprised by such a drastic change. She's unaccustomed to seeing him so calm and polite. Ultimately, the contract is signed, and the lady realizes she's done well. The brunette feels a strange sense of being used. Meanwhile, the protagonist asks if they can announce their relationship right away. There's a tea party at Count Terrence's house soon, and they plan to go together. Max asks if she knows who will be attending. The girl replies that Miss Arlo and her friends will be there. Max realizes she's unaware of Mikhail's presence. Madame Precia had previously remarked on the oddity of Miss Terrence personally inviting Sir Mikhail without warning anyone. The brunette says he should definitely go then. He imagines Mikhail's stunned expression as a gift. The protagonist doesn't understand what he's thinking, but is glad everything ended well. On the day of tea at the residence of Count Terrence, the aristocrats look at the lady in shock and ask what all this means. Rose is surprised and asks how an uninvited person ended up among the guests. She turns to Veronica, but she replies that she acted according to the rules, since the host has the right to invite whomever he or she wants. Rosa counters, reminding him that this requires the consent of both participants. She asks why Veronica did that, but Mikhail intervenes and reminds her that Rosa had done the same thing before. The girl tries to object. However, Mikhail interrupts her, saying that one shouldn't be strict with others and lenient with oneself. One of the ladies notes the logic in his words. Another adds that if an exception was made for one, then why not make one for two? Mikhail smiles and thanks the lady. Rose worries that if Lady Florane learns of his presence, she'll feel uncomfortable, but the others are clearly encouraged. Soon the main character enters the room and is surprised that everyone is already gathered, although she arrived on time. Mikhail is shocked to see another man standing next to Jubilian. The girl calmly asks if tea has begun. Mikhail wonders who this idiot is next to her. He remembers asking Veronica to invite him, fearing a meeting with Lady Florane. Everything was going perfectly, and he easily won over the young ladies. Even Rosemary Arlo was as friendly to Jubilian as before. With everyone on his side, all that remained was to wait for her to appear. But Jubilian wasn't alone. Rose apologized and asked who the man next to her was. The main character replies that it's her beloved Max. The ladies are immediately delighted and realize the rumors are true. Rosa says they look great together. Jubilian notices how well Max plays his part and decides to compliment him afterwards. Rosa adds that she's glad to meet him. Then she hints that there's another guest at the party. Jubilian notices Mikhail and is surprised by his presence. Max realizes he's finally met this vile guy. Mikhail wonders what's wrong with this impudent fellow and how dare he look down on him. The aristocrats sense a rivalry brewing. Mikhail is certain that Jubalian is simply trying to attract his attention with a new affair. He considers it too predictable. Since she only gave him his first name, the guy must be either from a poor family or a commoner. Mikhail decides he'll really get on her nerves today. He greets Jubalian with a smile. Max seethes with anger and barely holds it in. Jubalian doesn't understand why Mikhail is acting this way. She used to be in love with that smile and followed him until he fell into eternal sleep. Now these memories evoke nothing in her. She indifferently replies that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The girl immediately thanks Max for accompanying her and says they'll see each other later. The guy hugs her. He looks at Mikhail, making it clear that the seat next to Jubalian is now occupied. The protagonist notices his strange expression. Rosa suggests expanding the group, as there's already an unexpected guest today. She asks everyone else for their opinions, and Jubalian guesses who it is. The ladies agree. The main character is frightened, realizing that Max is a ticking time bomb, but thanks them anyway. Mikhail abruptly declares his objection, reminding her that the lady herself is an exception. Jubalian understands this but remains silent. Rose replies that these are two different things, since consent was given in advance. Veronica asks not to escalate the situation so as not to harm Lady Florane. Jubalian realizes that Veronica is the organizer and the daughter of Count Terence. She offers to escort the lady's partner to a spare room, and the girl thanks her. Jubalian is glad that the problem has resolved itself, and for some reason feels a similarity with Veronica. Veronica turns around and notices that all attention is focused on them. It's all because of one woman. Sometime later, they're already sitting at the table. Mikhail turns to Veronica, asks her to wait, and wipes her lips with a napkin. The main character watches this coldly. Mikhail is sure she can't take her eyes off him. He finds this predictable and is confident that she is still under his influence. Mikhail praises the tea and Veronica thanks him. Jubalian understands why she thought they were alike. Veronica is in love with Mikhail, just as she once was. For Jubalian, there is no sincerity in this, and she knows that Mikhail will still marry the princess, and everything will end in failure. She hopes Veronica won't go down the villain's path. Meanwhile, Max waits in the guest room and recalls her request to avoid confrontation. He understands that he has no place on the sidelines now, especially knowing what Mikhail is doing. That smug smile irritates him. He recalls reports that Mikhail never protected Jubalian, but used her money and name. Max mentally apologizes to Jubalian and realizes her fears were justified. There's no way around it. He decides it's time to act. Meanwhile, Mikhail offers Veronica a cake. The woman is embarrassed, and Mikhail invites her to go for a walk sometime. Veronica happily agrees and asks when it would be convenient for him. Mikhail doesn't care. He's only interested in Jubalian's reaction. She used to hate women around him. He deliberately makes it look like it's a date. But, glancing at Jubalian, he sees her smiling and discussing Max, comparing him to a cat. Rose agrees. Another lady admits that at first Max seems scary to her, and she did not expect this. Mikhail finds it strange that Jubalian doesn't look at him at all. Rose proposes to nominate Lady Florane as a new member of their community. She asks what everyone thinks about it. Jubalian is embarrassed and says that she is grateful, but there is no need to try so hard. Rose replies that it is not a burden to her, and that Lady Florane deserves it. Mikhail is irritated that she smiles so sweetly at others, but not at him. The girl says she's fine. The ladies support Jubalian's candidacy. She understands that she is confused, but this is a chance to get closer to her peers. However, she decides it's best to politely decline. Veronica objects. She reminds us of the rules and conditions of entry. Rose agrees that Veronica is right. Jubalian calmly says that if it doesn't meet the requirements, then so be it. But turning around, she sees Max in the window and wonders if he is in his right mind. She asked him to just sit quietly, and now she's worried that he'll be noticed. She wonders how long he's been there, and what will happen if someone sees it. Mikhail notices that she is looking out the window and also sees Max. Rose asks if she's listening. Jubalian replies yes, but understands that Max needs to be returned to his room immediately. Mikhail is angry, not understanding why she is looking at this guy and not at him. Max smirks and shows his superiority with his whole appearance. Mikhail is seething with anger. He gets up and says that he will go out for some air. Veronica wants to go with him, but he pushes her hand away. He says he will go alone, deciding that this arrogant fellow should be put to eternal sleep. The main character is already imagining how her father will be furious because of Max. She understands that if he is caught, everything will be over. When she looks out the window again, Max is no longer there. One of the ladies says she is looking forward to the continuation. Another mentions a tavern and special tea. Jubillion doesn't understand what she's talking about. Rose explains that this is a condition of entry to prepare a special person. Jubillion is shocked to realize that while she was distracted, everything had already been decided. Mikhail shouts for Max to come out immediately. The servant asks him to wait. Max replies that he is already here, and Mikhail is late, looking at him with contempt. At this time, Jubillion washes her hands and realizes that she accidentally agreed to host a tea party. Veronica comes up to her and asks why she keeps looking in her direction. Jubillion realizes that she has shown her emotions and says that she is angry with Mikhail. She admits that she was also used, and before she believed in his sincerity. Veronica clarifies what she means. Jubillion understands that Veronica does not want to admit it, just as she once did not. The girl apologizes and says that she didn't mean to hurt her feelings. Veronica is uncomfortable hearing this, but she is embarrassed to realize the similarity. Jubillion says she will take care of organizing the tea party, as she promised. She adds that if Veronica is uncomfortable, she can leave, and returns to the living room.